How come
NK
you're saying
Books.
nothing? Seeing no reply from Van Han, Tiet Duong pressed on, stubborn for an answer. Van Han said, "You annoy me." Clearly, even if she spoke he would not believe it. If she stayed silent he would still chase for questions. Van Han suddenly no longer wished to play the part. Paths diverge and cannot walk together. That hateful Tiet Duong was not even self-aware. Before Van Han could speak, a cry drew nearly everyone's attention on the bus. In the neighboring city, the eastern range has been hit by an abnormal downpour. A particularly severe debris flow has broken out. It's about 5,000 meters long, on average 300 meters wide and 5 meters thick, with a total volume around 7 million cubic meters. After the accident, over 100 people went missing. The local government, upon receiving the news, immediately dispatched rescuers. Our city hall, once informed, also rallied manpower to support. Hearing this, everyone stared. Mouth Sagape, neighboring city, to the east, a particularly severe debris flow. I've lived this long and never seen debris flow. How can the disaster zone be so vast? Just a heavy rain and it triggered a debris flow. How is that believable? Some refused to buy it, pulled out phones, and searched keywords to verify, and at first glance their feelings tangled. The media all ran the story. It must be true, they say it's due to geology and landform. That place is itself a frequent zone for landslides and debris flows. There's also the weather factor. A serious drought earlier made rock and soil contract, opening fissures. Then intense rainfall came and water entered the mountain cracks, forming a geological disaster. The abnormal downpour is part of it too. Once rock formed fissures, the sudden and then sustained heavy rain penetrated deep, causing collapse and landslip, finally becoming a debris torrent. And because such disasters are hidden, eruptive, and destructive, even the government could not fully survey them beforehand. With that, the bus fell silent. Someone timidly asked, if some unlucky soul was right in that area, wouldn't they be swept away before they could react? The girl who first cried out answered, heartsore, that's why so many are missing. Someone searched and found a video, likely shot by a survivor. Shaky yet still reflecting the scene of the moment, a debris surge burst in an instant, and in under 10 seconds it swept away more than a dozen cars on the road, where the flow invaded lay in chaos, streets and buildings ruined, losses impossible to tally. Seeing everyone bent over phones for clips, Van Han followed the tide and searched, opening the first video to find a family member she had not seen for days sitting on a rescue boat, quick-handed and sharp-eyed pulling people aboard. When another wave of debris charged in, the rescue boat bucked fiercely. Onlookers pinched out a cold sweat, afraid it would capsize. Van Han, was she opening it wrong, or seeing things? Why was Chu Dewey in that video? Recalling the words, our city hall rallied manpower to support, she realized Chu Dewey had been sent to aid the neighboring city. Tiet Duong lowered his voice, about to say more, but Van Han did not look up, busy, and she kept her eyes glued to the screen, watching every clip she could surface. Tiet Duong, so much for the mindset of ordinary folk. Was this not the price of crowning a newly awakened with praise? She ignored not only ordinary people but even fellow ability users like him. Tiet Duong chuckled inwardly. Sure enough, a newcomer who just gained power and got flattered a bit would drift without north or south. She did not know that a high-order spirit type could sit upon an altar worshipped by multitudes, yet could just as easily be imprisoned by other ability users as a captive. He cut her a sidelong glance, turned back, and restored his usual gentle expression. Soon the bus reached its destination and everyone filed out. Dismissed here. Free activity, Ma Chi-Siu announced, and at once the crowd hunted for seats to keep scrolling news and videos. Van Han ran through all related clips, some twice, yet she still refreshed again and again, hoping to catch the newest updates from the disaster zone. From afar came voices, something's off, this place has a problem. Even the company's spirit-type users felt nothing. What problem could there be? From the moment the bus stopped my heart spin. Racing without pause, that's normal. Hearts that do not beat belong to the dead, the living all have a beat, don't joke, it's up to 200 beats, it feels truly awful. I had a nightmare last night, woke this morning remembering every scene. I think the place in the dream looks a bit like this. You mean you had a premonition dream? Yes. No way, you're only spirit 1.1, whatever, let's ask someone. Van Han had no intention to eavesdrop, her hearing was simply too good. Even with distance and hushed tones the content was crisp as if unfolding before her. She looked over and saw the two girls who refused to hike yesterday run to Tiet Duong and pour out their story. Soon he shook his head. The more the girl insisted the more helpless his face became. Then all three walked toward Van Han. She's Tran Phuong Phuong, Spirit 1.1, says she's felt unwell since entering the farmstay. Tiet Duong summarized and then asked, do you sense danger? No, Van Han? shook, straightforward, a grey mist hung on everyone, which was normal, after the evolution game went public. Who did not carry some grey? As long as it did not turn pitch black into a mark of certain death, it was no big problem. Me neither. Tit Duong looked to Tran Phuong Phuong. Feel better now? You probably just had a bad dream. Tran Phuong Phuong bowed her head, apologetic. Maybe I overthought and troubled you all. He waved it off and walked away alone. Her friend comforted. The world's unsafe. A little caution never hurts. Tran Phuong Phuong fretted. If the tachycardia isn't danger sense, could it be some unknown illness? Watching Tit Duong's back recede, Van Han suddenly said, it may not be a wrong premonition, abilities differ and so do their triggers. Maybe you sensed it already while I have yet to receive a sixth sense warning. Shocked, she stammered. You're that strong. How could I feel it earlier than you? It happens, if you have potential and hit a burst, performing above standard, you may show something astonishing. After that she felt much relieved and decided, then I'll wait a bit. If after a while I still feel unwell, I'll request leave and depart the farm on the outskirts. The ailment to report would be unable to remain at the suburban farmstay, needing to leave to recover. All right, Van Han smiled assent. Even so, she had already realized the spot did have an issue. Earlier, when Tit Duong asked, do you sense danger, she answered no, and he followed with me neither. The moment he spoke, her power judged he was lying, therefore he surely knew something, only choosing to lie low, waiting for things to blow up so he could stand out as savior. I will not let you have your way. Van Han put her phone away and began to wander the vicinity. The air's good in the countryside. I'll go over there for some fresh breaths, Ma Chi Siu told his aide and walked off alone. A moment later Tit Duong quietly tailed him, and when acquaintances passed he only smiled, just stepping out for a bit. Earlier when Tran Phuong Phuong asked notice anything unusual, he said no, which was a lie. When danger loomed over someone near him he often glimpsed images in advance, yet he would not say. He preferred to wait until the person truly fell into peril, on the verge of death, and then appear like a hero to save them. In fact he had foreseen this morning that Ma Chi Siu, out walking, would slip by a lakeside and fall into a pond, so upon seeing the deputy general break away he followed, and before leaving he covertly checked Van Han's direction. Seeing she seemed persuaded and would not stop him, he chuckled inwardly. Once he saved the deputy and exposed Van Han as ungrateful, we would see how she could remain at the company. Yes, from the very start he had no mind to keep her. He did believe ability users were born a higher class, but that did not mean he would let someone step on his head and relegate him to second place. During the hike he sensed nothing while she called an emergency retreat. Keeping her meant feeling threatened in his position every hour, even sleep uneasy. Only by kicking her out could he restore his former standing and leisurely benevolently instruct lesser users how to enjoy life and exercise privilege. The matter grave, Tit Duong gathered himself, cleared stray thoughts, and tailed Ma Chi Siu closely while leaving enough distance not to be noticed. After about 15 minutes, Ma Chi Siu spotted a lake and moved closer for a look. Whether from last night's rain or a morning draining, the bank was slick. He did not mind and stepped on. His foot slid on mud, his stance failed, and he delivered himself into the pond. With a splash just as foreseen, he went into the water. Help, anyone, I cannot swim, he cried, thrashing for purchase. Never finding footing, swallowing several gulps of pond water, Tit Duong held his temper, waited a beat, then pretended to have heard and, upon seeing the scene, exclaimed, Deputy Chief, how did you fall in? Save me. Ma Chi Siu felt his awareness drifting. Any moment he might black out. On my way. Hold on, said Tit Duong, diving in with heroic intent. Ma Chi Siu was gluttonous and a gamer, and also a klutz, specifically a land duck who could not swim but dared stand at the bank. Worse, instead of playing dead like a log, when Tit Duong grasped him to haul him ashore he thrashed so hard that Tit Duong swallowed a few mouthfuls himself. Tit Duong. He wanted the rescue to look arduous but did not plan to buy one get one and bury himself too. Do not move, I cannot get a grip on you, he said, which truly meant touch me again and I let go. Whether Ma Chi Siu heard the advice or his consciousness slipped, he soon stopped struggling. Tit Duong strained and dragged him ashore, and at a glance the rescue had fainted. Who knew whether he would even remember the laborious rescue just now? At the same time, Van Han went to a farmhouse and started chatting. Has anything unusual happened around here lately? The peasant woman laughed. We're not like the folks in the city, nothing new ever happens here. I just asked another lady, and she didn't say the same thing, Van Han muttered, her voice calm yet audible enough for the woman to hear. She pressed her lips together and gave a polite, forced smile. Thank you, ma'am, I'll go ask others. Her words implied there was indeed something special happening, she just didn't know it yet. If something happened in the village, how could I, Tran Kim Hoa, not know? The woman huffed, nearly spitting blood. 3 months ago, a local thug got drunk and fell on the road. Bad luck, there was coal tar there, the tide was low, and he drowned. A month and a half ago, a scandal erupted at the Truong family's gate. The daughter-in-law gave birth to triplets, and none of them belonged to her husband. Each kid had a different father. 10 days ago, the factory in the neighboring village broke emission laws. It was already dark by then, and things only returned to normal much later. Are those things considered special? I'm even embarrassed to mention them. Only those naive country girls who don't know the world would find them fresh and talk about them everywhere. A factory breaking emission laws? Van Han's gaze sharpened as she recalled the water-rain disease and the small town buried under chemical waste. There was one type of danger the locals couldn't sense: severe environmental pollution. She could sense death easily, but pollution was a slow killer, taking decades from onset to death. Auntie, if the factory broke emission laws, aren't you worried living nearby? Van Han was surprised. If the villagers knew, why weren't they alarmed? Bah, that factory's been there for over 10 years. If trouble was going to happen, it would have already, Tran Kim Hoa said carelessly. Even if it's in the papers, the government just finds them, that's all. Since it was built, sometimes we smell something sharp, but nothing ever happens. The indifference of the villagers shocked Van Han. She paused the topic, carefully probing. When it happened, what did you see? A loud explosion. The factory spewed black smoke that dyed the clouds dark. Looking from the village, every other place had white clean clouds. Only around the factory was a thick dark patch. Tran Kim Hoa recalled. I was feeding pigs then. I looked up and saw it. Lots of others saw it too. Later those clouds drifted over the village and took a long time to fade. Saying that, she suddenly realized, wait, this feels off. You seem too interested in this factory matter. Are you from the government? Her thoughts ran wild. Van Han sighed. Auntie, after that emission event, did anyone in the village feel unwell? Or did livestock, plants, or birds die strangely? The question made the woman uneasy. Lately, yes, many crops have withered. Healthy trees suddenly peel bark, leaves crack, chickens and birds die overnight. Some people have rashes, kids' faces swell and their eyes turn red. She trailed off, staring blankly at Van Han. Indeed, strange things had piled up, yet before being asked, no one cared. The situation was clearly dire. Auntie, those are your words, don't blame me, Van Han said innocently. Tran Kim Hoa stammered. In the end, all she managed was, girl, what do we do now? Before Van Han could answer, Tran Phuong came running, talking like a machine gun. I went around the village and felt something terribly wrong everywhere. I want to run away now. I talked with my friend. We'll give up the worker benefits. If the deputy director agrees, we'll ask for leave and buy our own tickets home. If not, we'll resign and go. She turned to urge, Sister Han Han, you should leave too. No benefits worth risking your life. Tran Kim Hoa almost fainted. It's that bad? She asked, trembling. Phuong, resolute, my sixth sense says so. Whether true or not, I believe it. Wait, Kim Hoa was lost. Confront the factory or warn the villagers first? So many things to do, no clue where to start. But Van Han was calm. In this situation, of course we report it, she said, pulling out her phone. After a long wait, only a busy tone. Han, I saw on the news, a nearby city had a massive landslide, and many cities sent their rescue teams there. Now they barely have any left, Phuong said weakly. Van Han thought grimly, how coincidental. Even if the call got through, the police likely couldn't handle another case. She sighed and dialed a different number. Good thing I know people. NK Books. To Tran Kim Hoa, recent events felt surreal. Life was fine. Then suddenly someone claimed they were in danger. Thinking back, it did seem true. Soon after, a helicopter thundered down near the village. People got off, unpacked equipment, began testing. Watching them work, she tugged Van Han's sleeve, whispering, Girl, who are they? Checking how serious the problem is, Van Han said, we'll handle the early stage first, then when the police are free to take over, things will be easier. She didn't know how long that would take. Maybe they'd finish everything before the police even showed up. After calming the villagers, Van Han greeted, Director Lee. Director Lee, stern-faced, said, I've sent workers to conduct biological surveys, results should be out soon. Good, Van Han replied, anxious but patient. Investigation took time. And thank you, Lee added sincerely, you gave me another chance to save people. Who would have thought that after helping 4,000 residents relocate, he'd get another SS rating, the power of connections? Without knowing Van Han, he'd never get such luck. Van Han mused silently, with the police too busy. Hadn't she just found a perfect volunteer rich in money and resentment? At least the villagers were safe, Lee got his score, and everyone had a bright future. The toolman even worked happily, eager for the next round. This must cost a fortune. Once or twice, fine, but can you afford 3 or 4 times? Van Han asked genuinely. Money's external, Lee said with weary sadness. Lately I've realized existence is what matters. Without enough attribute points as a foundation, one slip and you're gone. Disasters strike too fast, sometimes at times and places you can't predict. Such as? Van Han asked. Lee smiled bitterly. Eating could mean poisoning. Under some schools are buried chemicals. Students there mostly get cancer or skin diseases. Even sleeping in your own apartment, the building can collapse overnight. Eating, living, traveling, dangers everywhere. All I can do is give myself and my family more points, so when disaster hits, we last a bit longer. Van Han was speechless, hearing that life indeed felt full of hazards. Ordinary people had no way out. But Lee wasn't ordinary. She suspected he was playing the pitiful card, though she had no proof. Got results, a tester hurried over to report. What is it? Lee's tone turned sharp. It's TCDD, the man said gravely, a chemical poison called the toxin of the century, 900 times more toxic than arsenic, 1,000 times more than cyanide. It causes severe skin disease and affects reproduction, immunity, and development in mammals. It persists long in the environment and degrades very slowly. Before that, residents will keep being exposed. We found heavy TCDD on leaves and plants. If it rains, the toxin will seep into soil, harming crops. Van Han recalled, villagers said crops withered, livestock and birds died strangely. If they fed contaminated plants to poultry, the tester's face darkened. Then TCDD will accumulate in animal fat. Once people eat that meat, they'll get nausea, headaches, and more symptoms. Tran Kim Hoa, eavesdropping, could no longer hold back. Didn't the factory just release industrial gas? How could it be this serious? She exclaimed. They likely released not regular gas, but toxic TCDD vapor. In several village spots, the toxin concentration far exceeds the limit, the man said. Tran Kim Hoa froze. What was this, sitting at home waiting for death to fall from the sky? Doing nothing yet inhaling poison until you die? Tran Phuong also heard. After thinking a bit, she turned to her friend. If I recall, the deputy director went right into the worst feeling area to breathe some fresh air, didn't he? The friend. After a short exchange, a worker hurried over to report that we took samples from the lake, the spring, tap water, and groundwater, and in quite a few samples there's a large amount of TCDD. The village's contamination is extremely severe. Tran Kim Hoa drew a deep breath, but before she could exhale, the worker added, we also received notice that many households' poultry and livestock have died off in batches. The villagers have collectively fallen into panic, the bad news piling up choked her so hard she could hardly breathe. Director Lee immediately ordered, go, lead the way to see it, and everyone rushed after. Along the way, Tran Phuong saw withered leaves, desolate fields, and even pens where animals had died in mass. She grabbed her friend's hand and shook it wildly, excitedly saying, these scenes, I saw them in a dream. It was not a nightmare that scared me, it was a foreknowledge dream, her face full of I have a future, even muttering this cowardly spiritual. 1.1 still gets a day like this. Her friend watched her flip from serious to husky-level excitement and kindly cautioned, I know you're amazing, calm down a bit, but Tran Phuong simply could not calm down, chattering non-stop, and the friend could only keep up with helpless small talk. Many households' birds had died, and the crew picked one farm nearby as the first stop. When they arrived, Van Han swept a glance and saw poultry and livestock strewn all over, the death poses. Ghastly, the house empty as if the owners were out. The technician whispered, these animals absolutely cannot be eaten, it's best to burn and destroy them on the spot. Though they were not hers, Tran Kim Hoa still felt her heart torn. To raise these animals fat and strong, the villagers poured in so much care, and now the innocent are dead and must be burned right there. trampling the villagers' hard work. As if to confirm her words, the owner arrived a step late, and at the sight of the carnage his legs went weak. He collapsed and wailed helplessly. Directorly raised his voice, "I'm willing to buy these animals at market price, on the condition that from now on they belong to me and I'll handle them." The crying suddenly stalled. The owner blurted, "How shameless is that?" Yet his eyes stayed fixed on Directorly, afraid he would change his mind. Directorly explained, "Their bodies contain a highly toxic substance that can cause cancer. They absolutely cannot enter the food chain. Ask the others in the village. If they agree, I'll buy everything and incinerate it on the spot." What highly toxic substance? How could it cause cancer? Buying them all just to burn? What is this? Treating money like trash? The owner was stunned, so Tran Kim Hoa leaned in and gave a quick explanation. Upon hearing it, a chill rose in his heart. He nodded rapidly. "You're willing to shoulder this? You are a living bodhisattva, the savior of our village. Rest assured I'll persuade everyone." In truth, once the stakes were made clear, even without persuasion the villagers would sell to Directorly. Some of the young were born at home, some were bought and raised, and everyone had invested effort. Now this was the only chance to recover anything. Miss it, and the loss must be borne alone. No one is a fool enough to play tough right now. The technician added, "By the way, it would be best to convince the villagers to cooperate with blood draws for testing." The owner promptly rolled up his sleeve. "Come on, draw away." Tran Kim Hoa, timid at heart, still said, "Draw one for me too. Let's see what's going on." The technician swiftly drew and collected samples. Tran Phuong watched wide-eyed, brimming with curiosity. Her friend tugged her sleeve. "Didn't you say we should run quickly?" But there was lively drama to watch. How could she go at once? Out loud she said, "We haven't found the deputy general yet, and I haven't asked for leave." The friend exposed her. "With your earlier attitude you clearly planned to bolt. You did not even want the job, and you still fear the deputy will remember and make you wear tight shoes. Spare me, just run. Once you're on the train send him a text, give the team a token notice so there's some explanation." Tran Phuong grinned sheepishly. "Once I find the deputy and get leave approved, I'll go right away, I promise." In truth it was not about leave. She plainly wanted to stay for the spectacle, and the friend could not be bothered to poke further. That said, seeing Van Han standing steady handling things, having invited Directorly and the technician to remain in the village to investigate rather than leave, the two began to feel maybe it was not as dire as imagined. In fact, they did not understand what the danger here was, how it manifested, or how to protect themselves. Their thinking was simple and naive. If it's unsafe, run far and you're safe. Just get away from the origin and you're fine. And beyond that they knew nothing. But when they saw Van Han and Directorly systematically investigating and arranging blood draws, they suddenly felt it would not hurt to delay. These were survival lessons worth studying. Mere escape would not earn high evaluations. To survive better they had to find ways to earn more attribute bonus points. Unknowingly the friend's mindset shifted. After the draw, Tran Kim Hoa went around the village informing everyone that the factory had vented toxic gas. While the owner went to speak with the village head, Tran Phuong waited and waited until the dead livestock and poultry had been bought by Directorly and the burning began, and the villagers had begun lining up for blood testing, yet still no sign of that troublesome deputy returning. She wondered, could he have learned I planned to resign and is hiding on purpose? The friend pulled out her phone, scrolled the chat history, and said the deputy fell into the lake. Xia Yang heard the cries for help and rescued him. Both swallowed quite a bit of water. The deputy even lost consciousness. Tran Phuong was aghast. The deputy not only went into the area with the highest toxic gas concentration to breathe so-called fresh air, he also tasted the crystal-clear farmhouse water that, as it happens, contains deadly poison. Earlier the technician had said TCDD's toxicity is comparable to arsenic times 900 and potassium cyanide times 1000. The village was badly polluted. The water contained a large amount of TCDD. What does that mean? Roughly like mixing arsenic in water and drinking several big bowls, she murmured. No wonder he's the deputy. I salute him as a true man. The friend snapped her case shut and pocketed her phone because she has a dirt phobia and cannot stand grimy things in sight. Xia Yang hauled the man ashore, did cardiopulmonary resuscitation for many minutes, then waited a while longer, seeing Mai Zhishao still breathing but unconscious. He finally hoisted him onto his back and trudged home. Midway Mai Zhishao drifted awake. Xia Yang had noticed already but pretended not to, keeping up his pattered deputy. Hang in there, we're almost back. His steps slowed as if utterly spent, yet he still gritted his teeth. No matter what, I must bring you back. Mai Zhishao was deeply moved and secretly decided that from this day on Xia Yang would be his sworn brother. As long as he remained in his prime he would shield him. After A long walk they met some villagers, who rushed up to help hold the deputy. Xia Yang, a psychic-type esper with weak strength stats, had gone far with a load and his legs were trembling. He quickly set Ma Zhishao down and explained he accidentally fell into the pond and passed out. The villagers were alarmed. I'll call people, hurry, and find a doctor. Just then Ma Zhishao slowly opened his eyes. No need to trouble anyone, I'm fine. The villagers were unconvinced. Your voice is hoarse and... You call that fine, really fine? Ma Zhishao felt mortified and did not want to fuss, just fell into the pond and took a few gulps. It's not a problem. But the villagers stared round and slapped their thighs. How did you fall in and even drink the water inside? Then explained. The expert said the factory vented toxic gas into our village. Now plants, animals, and the water all contain deadly poison. Ma Zhishao was stunned. Xia Yang went stiff like a wooden puppet. You're joking, right? Ma Zhishao tried to struggle. The villager frowned. Who jokes about this? Everyone is getting blood drawn and checked. If you two are idle, go draw a sample too. Ma Zhishao nearly raved. If we're poisoned, will drawing blood and running a test make the poison go away? Who told you to fall in there? If you had not gone in there would be no problem. The villager was speechless. Ma Zhishao choked off, while a chill crept over Xia Yang. The deputy fell by accident, but he himself had planned it, going in on purpose to rescue and score points, only to gain gratitude while risking his own health. This deal was too costly. He forced a calm face and casually asked one of our companions, a girl named Van Han, do you know where she is? The villager slapped his thigh. The toxic gas matter was discovered by her, and the expert was someone she invited. They did not know that was a lab tech, they just saw someone educated and versed in the field and called her an expert. Xia Yang gave a bitter smile. She discovered it. Why did she not tell everyone first? Ma Zhishao instantly found a target for venting. If she had said it earlier I would not have been blundering around like this. Where is Van Han? The villager heard their tone turning hostile and their face cooled. She realized something was wrong while talking to folks. How could she notify beforehand? She spent the whole day taking samples and testing to finally understand what happened. She has not even rested yet. You do not understand. She is an esper who can sense in advance. Ma Zhishao looked down on the villagers' lack of knowledge and thought that was why they believed Van Han innocent. He repeated the question. The villager kept silent. Ma Zhishao chuckled in anger. Fine, if you will not say, I'll find her myself. After some time he finally located Van Han, and the moment they met he charged up fiercely. Did you already know the village was dangerous and deliberately kept quiet? Van Han was baffled. Of course not. My ability is not omniscience and omnipotence. Ma Zhishao halted, his momentum ebbing, because her earnest expression did not resemble a lie at all. Van Han continued. Abilities have trigger mechanisms, they do not work every time. I decided to investigate only after hearing what Tran Fuang said. Beside her, Tran Fuang nodded like a pecking hen. At first Sister Han Han only suspected. Then by talking with villagers she inferred something had happened but could not be sure. Only after inviting people to sample and test did we have a conclusion. In other words, Van Han handled the incident through logical thinking, not power. Ma Zhishao stood rigid with embarrassment and nowhere to vent his anger, nearly burning himself instead. Xia Yang was astonished too. He had thought Van Han was swayed by him and had chosen to let disaster befall someone so she could rescue at the last moment, but she had sensed nothing at all. What is wrong with you two? Van Han asked. Ma Zhishao, mouth bitter, braced himself and recounted everything. After hearing the unlucky tale of this aggrieved leader, Van Han cast Xia Yang a meaningful look, and unease surged in his heart. Before he could steer away, she asked loudly in front of everyone, Xia Yang, did you already foresee the boss would get into trouble and yet you gave no warning and did not stop him? Only waited until he fell into the pond to stage a rescue and maximize goodwill. At that, Ma Zhishao felt as if struck by lightning and stared at Xia Yang. What nonsense are you talking about? He put on a helpless face as if she was picking a fight. Van Han said coolly, if you have not done anything against your conscience, answer head on and stop acting. I did not, Xia Yang said solemnly. She smiled thinly. A lie? What did you say? He frowned. I forgot to mention, besides sensing danger I can also detect lies. She smiled with a sharp edge. My ability tells me you just lied, which means you did foresee the deputy would have an accident, and you planned early how to save him to earn the greatest goodwill. Ma Zhishao felt a heart-piercing chill, deeper than when he learned he had drunk poison. He had believed Xia Yang happened by and saved him, and he had planned to repay him with all his heart for life, but it turned out everything was calculated. He fought to keep his reason and asked, how do I know you are telling the truth? Van Han said the police department has plenty of lie-detecting espers. If you are not at ease then call and report it. I will go with Xia Yang to the station for a test, then we will see in one glance who is lying. Ma Zhishao turned away. She is volunteering to go to the station. What do you say? Xia Yang grew nervous and stumbled. For a matter this small, the police are busy, no need to go to the station. Tran Phuong Phuong snorted a laugh. One person dares go to the police to prove innocence, one person does not dare approach. Who is lying and who is not is crystal clear. Ma Zhishao felt dizzy, darkness fluttering at the edge of his sight. The blow was so great he could not accept it for the moment, his face went blank. Midsummer, if I don't spell it out, how exactly did Ti Duong pull that stunt, huh? I warned him again and again, everything could have stayed calm, yet he insisted on playing little schemes, running petty mind games, and in the end let two people tumble into the bath pond and even gulp a few mouthfuls of poison water. Ma Chi-siu, thinking of things that could have been avoided but weren't, could not quite hold his temper. He growled, "Do you have anything else to say, seeing it could not be hidden?" Ti Duong simply went for broke. "You slipped and fell in yourself, it wasn't me who shoved you into the pond. I only hesitated about saving you because living together day to day hasn't exactly been pleasant." With a few easy lines he wiped his hands of responsibility, even raised his voice, "I'm the one who hauled him up. Without me could the deputy chief be standing here now? What standing do you have to question me?" Ma Chi-siu was choked into silence. Tran Phuong Phuong muttered, "Why do I feel like he kind of has a point?" Their friends kept quiet, because this really was hard to judge. In the deadlock, Van Han asked, "If he soaked in the pond and drank the water, should we draw blood for a full panel?" Everyone looked over. Van Han shrugged, "If you believe a super ability user intended to harm an ordinary person, I advise calling the police." Ma Chi-siu went green, he fell in by himself, and even if Ti Duong did nothing he would not be punished. Not to mention Ti Duong did save him, yet to let it slide stuck in his craw, what kind of rescue is that? Leaving someone to thud around underwater for a moment, waiting until he is about to die before pulling him up, and still wanting extra gratitude. The more he thought the angrier he got, and at last he stormed off. Once the matter seemed over, Ti Duong gave Van Han a glance and said, "Lo, you're impressive. I underestimated you," then left as well. Van Han thought, "For such a petty mess it is perfectly normal you flipped your cart," and since the words were at odds she could not be bothered to answer him. Instead Tran Phuong Phuong mumbled, "I remember the deputy chief is third generation rich. The company was founded by his grandfather, and he keeps quite a few super ability users around him. If he takes revenge Ti Duong may not fare well, after all he is a spirit-type super ability user, fragile. If targeted and taught a lesson he would have nowhere to run. You still have the mood to worry about him." Her friend leaned over, "Did you forget something?" Huck. Tran Phuong Phuong was blank. "Ask for leave," the friend reminded. Tran Phuong Phuong froze, having been too engrossed in the spectacle she had forgotten. "Let's go now." She tugged her friend, greeted Van Han, and hurried off. With the onlookers gone, Van Han turned to check on the burning and disposal of livestock. The village raised a great many animals, carcasses piled like a low hill, not fit to eat and had to be dealt with. After Director Lai paid to buy up the stock, he immediately arranged to burn them. One burn ran for several hours, roughly several tens of thousands of head were destroyed. When it was done, Director Lai was first stunned then overjoyed. "The system says I blocked the spread of toxic substances, prevented more people from being affected, and got an SS rating." At first he bought the animals out of sympathy so villagers would not suffer too heavy a loss. Who knew he would also pocket an SS? He cheerfully calculated further that once results were confirmed and villagers were relocated he could score another SS, a single work trip pumping attribute points like mad. Truly a huge win. Van Han smiled, "Congratulations, sow and reap, this is pleasing, at least with such operations the world sits a little easier in her eyes." That night they had planned to sleep at a farmhouse. Hearing that a plant had vented toxic gas and the whole village was affected, the timid wanted to flee overnight while the bold wanted to stay and watch, but Ma Chi-siu, face dark, refused. "This is a welfare trip for employees. If something happens the company bears it. Get on the bus and return to the hotel." The tone was poor but the sense was right, so even the bold boarded reluctantly. "Except Van Han," she said, "the work is not over. I will stay in the village another day or two." Ma Chi-siu said, "You are an employee and must obey arrangement." "Then I resign," Van Han answered without a beat. He realized this young woman, usually polite and easy to talk to, was steel when it came to business. She did not fear higher-ups, and in her logic once she resigned everyone was a citizen of the Federation and none nobler than another. Plus she had just punctured Ti Duong's little show and spared him being toyed with, so Ma Chi-siu could not be too harsh. "Do as you like," and he could not be bothered to persuade more. Van Han waved goodbye and added, "Remember to get a full body check when you're back." "Shut up," he snapped. Thinking of it made his chest tight, as if the toxin had soaked his bones and even his heartbeat was off. The bus rolled away and Van Han, with Director Lee's team, continued clinical chemical testing. and through analyzing blood samples they found that the closer to the toxic zone, the likelier villagers were to develop chlorine acne, that heart disease rose among men and some women had growths, and compared with ordinary folks the villagers were more prone to circulatory illness and to diabetes, with higher mortality rates. They also measured TCDD in soil, and in the worst spots the TCDD thickness by soil measure exceeded 50 units per square meter, while for a normal adult the lethal dose of TCDD was 40 units. Van Haan thought again of the two unlucky devils who had drunk pond water and felt they would not live long. When the reports came out and evidence was in hand, Director Lai asked for instruction. What now? Van Haan looked at him. Surprised, call the police. The evidence was collected and what they could do was done. Arrest and interrogation required the police. Director Lai was taken aback, then felt that was exactly like Van Haan. She told him, the hotline may be shadow blocked, have many people call together and keep dialing until it goes through, right? He gathered more than 24 callers and indeed the signal was blocked and all numbers were emergency reroutes. After quite a while one line finally transferred. A worker handed over his phone to the boss. Director Lai took it, then passed it to Van Haan, and she, without ceremony, said smoothly, hello, I want to report a case. This is Village XX. The nearby plant is venting toxic gas in violation, in huge quantity, enough to endanger the life and health of more than 10,000 residents around. At that the operator almost dropped the mic. Lately the entire net was focused on a particularly grave landslide with roughly more than 2,000 victims, already calling for aid from nearby cities, and this caller opened with a case affecting over 10,000. The operator trembled. On what basis do you judge this? What evidence do you have? The operator, steady, asked. Van Haan narrated the whole process and ended. I am Van Haan, a spirit-type super-ability user. I heard from your colleagues that my number was specially flagged, but after the incident I could not get through to the police with my phone and had to use another to report. The operator paused, then said, understood. I will immediately alert colleagues to head to the plant. The call ended. Van Haan returned the phone to the worker and told Director Lai, you can start negotiating relocation with the villagers. With lab reports in hand, she believed no one would want to stay as a stubborn holdout. If someone truly refused to leave his home, well, let him be. Thinking of another SS incoming, Director Lai grinned. I will get on it now. Officers went to the plant to invite the person in charge back to assist the investigation, and others entered the village to dig deeper, only to be blocked at once by a stack of documents. This is the water test report, this the soil report, this the villagers' blood work. Van Haan said while handing out copies. Crops have withered in large number, livestock and poultry carry toxins. To prevent poisoned food from circulating we have destroyed the lot. The officers were dumbfounded. The work already done left nothing for them, and they suddenly did not know what to do. The chemical plant by the village belonged to a pharmaceutical company. The person in charge, once brought to the station, kept his mouth shut, nerves plain to see. An officer sensed something off. You didn't know the gas discharge had a problem beforehand, didn't you? The man pressed his lips and refused to speak. The officers traded looks and, while he was unguarded, switched in someone else. No need to be tense. I am here to help you. And in the whisper of the newcomer the manager drifted, his eyes losing focus. 1 hour later the hypnotist super ability user shuffled out, sleepy. Got it. The plant knew. The cause was simple. 1 noon the workshop went abnormal and nearby workers heard a sizzle. To prevent an explosion the production chief entered and tried to start the reaction cooling system, but control suddenly dulled, temperature surged, and pressure climbed out of control. When the heat exceeded 200 degrees C the safety valve, overburdened, blew, shattered the roof, and released a cloud of toxic gases. Worse, the extreme heat generated TCDD which directly formed a toxic cloud. To the unknowing eye it looked like illegal emissions forming a black cloud. The authorities had thought the TCDD discharge around 300 units and not too severe, but after statements they learned that in fact 15 to 18 kilograms of TCDD had leaked. The plant knew that if the truth came out they would be cursed to high heaven, and since TCDD is deadly and the harm too great to reel back they decided to cover it up and try to hoodwink the world, only to be exposed in the end. After hearing the ins and outs, everyone in the shielded room clenched their jaws. Are they even human? Utterly without conscience, the hypnotist added. He said residents affected by TCDD would not die in the short term, but in some decades the rate of hard-to-cure illness would skyrocket. The world is chaotic now and accidents many people might die of something else before the illness even appears. Drag the time a bit and it will be covered over. He curled his lip. Who knows where that confidence comes from? A veteran officer asked. Did he know that if not for the quick actions of those who discovered it, burning livestock and destroying grain, once those were sent elsewhere the danger would have spread? The hypnotist chuckled. If he did not know, why keep his mouth shut? The old officer was stumped, so, the hypnotist sighed, this is knowingly breaking the law. The Italy case. Within a few days, 3,300 poultry died and more than 80,000 head of livestock were culled outright, with parts sourced from the origin and from materials. That heavy load-bearing wall that was smashed had follow-ups. Some households refused to move and continued living in a dangerous building. Truly so. They had hollowed out 4 wallets to buy the apartment and could not bear to part there. Furniture and daily goods were inside. Hotels or rentals cost money, and ordinary families cannot shoulder such great monthly expense, so they returned to live. Danger be damned, even though the wall cracks were plain to see. Whether this case or another, there was a load-bearing wall demolished because the blueprint was marked wrong. In truth it was load-bearing and must not be removed, but the drawing labeled it non-bearing and allowed demolition. And afterward, the chemical plant's manager clearly knew the gas being released was highly dangerous, yet after the accident he pretended nothing had happened and said nothing, so the government decided to impose a heavy punishment. However, no matter how harshly he was punished, the villagers who lost their health never recovered. And Van Haan's job ended up the same way. Director Lee looked at Van Haan, wanting to ask, "You're unemployed again?" But he held back, feeling that even honesty would be too provocative right now, bad for maintaining their long-term friendly relationship. He had thought about inviting Van Haan to join his company, but her sending the boss away with ability far exceeded her foresight, so rather than risk that, he'd rather lose a talent. Van Haan herself stayed calm. Her bosses usually couldn't survive the probation period, either they ended up on a prison bus or in an ambulance. Anyway, life or freedom had to be lost. Only a few lucky ones could escape alive. At first she found it extreme, but after enough times she got used to it, even felt that was just life. After the evolution game became public the world was indeed that dangerous. Van Haan accepted it well. After rescuing the villagers she prepared to go home and said, "You handle the rest. Contact me if anything comes up later." Hearing the word later, even knowing it was politeness, Director Lee couldn't help but smile. "All right. Congratulations, player, for surviving instance number 204. 1679 Great Landslide Disaster. Because you saved 233 humans, your rating is S. Rewards, Strength plus 0.4, Agility plus 0.4, Constitution plus 0.4, Spirit plus 0.3. Current stats: Strength 8.9, Agility 8.8, Constitution 9.6, Spirit 9.4, total 36.7. Xiao Dui sat in a corner, bored to death, sipping bottled water when his phone buzzed with a message. Van Haan, trips over, on the way home, will arrive in about 6 hours. Xiao Dui jumped up with a whoosh, grabbed his supervisor. "Sir, the rescue mission's done, I plan to head back to the city." The rescue department chief thought for a moment, then nodded. "You should. The stay-behind team said they're going crazy, they need support fast." "I mean, once I'm back I'm taking leave," Xiao Dui corrected. The chief froze. "Huh? We agreed I'd help this time using my compensatory vacation, now I want to take it. There's still a mountain of backlogged work. Didn't you volunteer to stay for overtime before?" "After this, the whole department's buried in tasks. You can't just leave us under piles of work." The chief tried emotional appeal. Xiao Dui replied without hesitation, "I can." When Van Haan went traveling he'd had nothing to do, so he worked casually, but now that she was back, how could he still care to stay? He wished he could grow wings and fly to her. The chief sighed. When he looked like he'd argue again, Xiao Dui asked, "So if someone softens once and volunteers overtime, that means overtime becomes their duty forever?" "Of course not," the chief groaned. "Good. If I said it's an emergency and you must stay," the chief cautiously probed. Xiao Dui, face blank, said, "Then I'd feel my job is interfering with my life, my relationship, and I'd have to quit." The chief froze. "Luckily, our department values democracy and human rights," he said with a pained grin. Xiao Dui's tone was mild, unclear if mumbling or speaking to him. "Every day you say we're short on staff, months have passed, still short, never hiring newbies?" "We are," the chief protested, "the government keeps recruiting, but frontline death rate is 60 to 70%. The new hires die, get crippled, or end up hospitalized. What can I do?" "The Federation's policy is that when disaster strikes, officials must Go first. If officials don't die first, the citizens will never be safe. Xiao Duwei raised a brow. Special Rescue Department mortality isn't that high. Exactly, which is why other departments steal all the rookies. They say we're fully staffed while they need fresh blood, the chief complained. Xiao Duwei sneered, so that's why it's always the same few people, working endlessly. The chief fell silent, then tried, with you here, our mortality's only 1 or 2%, much better than others. Then shouldn't that earn me 3 extra vacation days? The chief nearly swore. Without you our efficiency drops, jobs go unfinished, he pleaded. Perfect, then we'll have a solid reason to request new hires, said Xiao Duwei coolly. That's not easy, as long as recruits are distributed evenly, added to rescue department like everyone else, things balance out, we all get normal lives. I'm asking for fairness, not privilege. What's wrong with that? Should we be punished for being capable? Doing extra occasionally's fine, but often means we're just easy targets? Each question struck like a hammer. The chief faltered, mumbling, I just think departments with higher losses need more people, fair distribution first. When our department's not short, then be generous, give them newbies. Ours is short yet we're still giving, ridiculous. The chief, hearing his tone, grew nervous. You're not planning to resign again, are you? Considering it. Fine, I'll request it. Once you're back from leave, I'll secure new recruits. Xiao Duwei looked at him with clear honest eyes. If you don't, I'll keep requesting leave. Definitely a threat. The chief groaned, think of the poor citizens. Those helpless people waiting for rescue. Honestly, said Xiao Duwei evenly, I question the government's save everyone policy. It's called the evolution game, it's meant to force evolution. The government's repeated interference, is that saving lives, or stealing citizens' chance to evolve? I have doubts. The chief's face darkened. At a time like this, don't stir up hearts. Xiao Duwei fell silent, stood upright, calm and righteous. The chief, drained, waved, go, take your leave, just get out of my sight. Given permission, Xiao Duwei vanished in a flash, fearing a change of heart. What karmic debt am I paying? The chief muttered, dragging his weary body back to the pile of overtime tasks. The TCDD hazard was too great, none of the villagers wanted to stay another day, so Director Li's men negotiated easily. Within half a day arrangements were done. By night everyone packed and evacuated. On the train back, Van Han received another system message, congratulations, player, for surviving instance number 204,846, chemical plant pollution incident. Because you indirectly saved 32,432 humans, your rating is SSS, reward, strength +1, agility +1, constitution +1, spirit +1. Current stats, strength 9.7, agility 9.7, constitution 10, spirit 10, total 39.4. Note 1, max per attribute is 10, cannot increase beyond. Note 2, player's constitution and spirit are both 10. Congrats on becoming the server's first saint, meaning one attribute at max 10. Note 3, with any attribute maxed at 10, you gain partial divine power, details to discover yourself. Unexpectedly, the affected population far exceeded estimates, resulting not in a SS but SSS rating, yet what saint title and divine power meant the game gave no explanation. Damn useless system. It stayed silent as death, so Van Han angrily closed the translucent panel. Time was running short, the masked man grew anxious. Day by day the progress of his super ability mass production plan crawled like a turtle, and whenever his gathered subordinates did a little evil, the government hunted them down. Facing this impasse, he had to admit he lacked villain talent. Luckily he could glimpse shards of the future and knew who specialized in manipulation. Xia Yang, master of human psychology, once adored by tycoons and worshipped like a god, until a mind reader caught him and the big financial groups jointly placed a bounty on his head. Rumor said his foresight was extraordinary, he loved using it to set traps for employers, could easily help them avoid danger unscathed but instead always pushed them into peril, only to save them at the last second, snatching them from death's hand. Some were gravely injured, some crippled, yet they still worshipped him, believing without Xie Yang they'd surely have died, but when they later learned they hadn't needed to suffer at all, their hatred burned sky-high, wishing to tear him apart. If the masked man could recruit Xie Yang and let him use his heaven-given talent, the Federation would be toyed around, and their chase would cease. With just a crack, a single chance, he could overturn the situation. Plan decided, the masked man followed future hints to Xie Yang's residence, but upon arrival 2 black-clad bodyguards stood guard. When asked his purpose, they smirked. Xie Yang gambled his life to save our young master. Out of gratitude, the young master told us to take good care of him. You can see him if you like, but fair warning, his face is ulcerated, lungs and liver full of abscess, he's got cancer, sleeps most of the day, only occasionally lucid, you'll have to wait if you want a word. The masked man silently thought, useless. Chapter 86 Unemployment Part 2 I'm back. Though she knew the house was likely empty, Van Han still called out. It was her little ritual of coming home. Who could have guessed that as soon as she finished, a blur rushed at her. Han Han, I missed you so much. Weren't you sent to help with the landslide? How are you at home? Van Han hugged the excited pup and asked. The supervisor approved 3 days off, Tu Due answered deftly, and with comp time, I've got a whole week. Perfect, I'm free too, let's go out somewhere. Remembering her promise before the trip, Van Han took the initiative to invite. Great. Tu Due agreed with delight. Then, chatting drifted to, while you were out, did anything happen? Van Han answered offhand, there did. A dark cloud blew in, and soon the whole village started breathing toxic air, everyone drifting toward chronic death. People who heard it said it sounded outrageous, truly unheard of and unseen. Tu Due froze mid-motion, then turned around anxiously. Then Van Han said calmly, I earned an SSS rating, my physique rose to 10. Tu Due? At first it sounded far-fetched, but thinking it over, it felt like a logical development. Chronic death wasn't within my sensing range, but someone felt something wrong and had a warning dream. I was uneasy, so I dug in to investigate. Van Han recounted everything from the past few days. Tu Due occasionally probed for details, sticking in a few needles of sharp questions, and expressed sincere admiration for her keen intuition. The more they talked, the higher their spirits rose, the room filled with lively, happy air. Smiles brimmed in Tu Due's eyes, the familiar happiness of everyday life had returned. The next morning at 9, Van Han received a call from Director Lai. I got an SSS rating. All 4 faculties went up 1 notch. His voice overflowed with excitement, clearly his heart was pounding. Van Han said, I know you're thrilled, but don't get too excited yet. Explain clearly, what exactly happened? The village had roughly 6,000 to 7,000 people. By the estimate, SS would have been right. The police issued a notice, publicly exposing a chemical plant venting toxic gas, and warned nearby residents to mind their safety. If any bodily reactions appear, go to the hospital right away. Director Lai tamped down his joy and tried to explain succinctly. Just then the villagers were relocating together, and nearby residents came asking if we could arrange a place for them too. I figured TCDD is highly toxic and hard to break down. Those living around the plant must be affected, moving them would be safer, so I agreed. Result: when the system settled accounts, it counted those people too. Van Han instantly understood. Although the dark cloud drifted toward the village and the village suffered the worst, in truth those living near the chemical plant were more or less affected. Because Director Lai acted with kindness, the SS evaluation was raised to SSS. Thinking so, Van Han's first reaction, that SSS must be truly precious. Relocating that many people at once, wasn't that costly? She asked tactfully. Director Lai laughed. Among acquaintances, quite a few rich folks were in trouble, half alive and half dead, urgently needing the body attribute to save their lives. It happened that someone handling beasts had an SS rating. While helping the villagers move, I thought to reconnect. They had helped me before, so we split up the rating, shared the benefits, and I took an S rating myself. I don't know how the system calculated it, but in the end we spent not a single coin. SS rose to SSS, ha ha ha. He sounded genuinely proud, his laughter was carefree. Van Han thought, no wonder he is a businessman, turning 1 into 4. Still, the world is harsh, good people must be sharper and wiser than bad people to survive better. Director Li's mind is ingenious. Yet not without righteousness. I worried too much, Van Han praised from the heart.
Not at all, thanks to your warning.
Before Van Han, Director Lai remained humbly modest. No, it's Director Li's chivalrous heart, always helping others.
No, it's Miss Van Han's decisive handling.
The two exchanged a round of mutually respectful flattery, then ended the call. Breakfast is ready, come eat, Tu Due called, and seeing the smile she could not hide at the corner of her lips, he smiled too. What is it?
What good thing happened so early?
Van Han replied, suddenly I feel that besides me, many others are striving to make the world better. She could feel clearly that though this world was sometimes not great, it was far from beyond saving.
Tu Due said solemnly, I don't quite believe it, unless you let me feel it too.
Van Han laughed, then answered just as solemnly, all right, after we eat I'll take you out.
Human joys and sorrows rarely line up.
Here Tu Due was happily in love, over there, the Special Rescue Department was worked to the point of spitting blood, longing to foam at the mouth and roll their eyes and faint, only then could they justifiably, comfortably sleep a bit.
Chief, why did you agree to the captain's vacation?
No matter where the person in charge went, everyone who met him roared. He certainly could not say he was being squeezed, he only said seriously, Tu Due's ability is solid, but his thinking is not upright enough. These few days, I'll have him stay home and reflect.
So, it was not a vacation. The vice captain's lip twitched. You are not punishing him, you are punishing us.
A team member raised a hand and shouted, I also want to go home and reflect. The person in charge's face darkened, he grabbed a folder and rapped the speaker on the forehead, I see your lazy cancer flaring up, I prescribe a larger workload to straighten that attitude.
With that, he briskly assigned tasks.
The unlucky guy was speechless with tears. How did the workload suddenly double?
Something's happened.
A staffer hurried in, face grave. A 3-person squad was chasing a superpowered criminal and lost contact.
It's been a dozen minutes since the last ping, odds look grim. Faces fell all around.
The chief reflexively issued orders, Tu Due, find their location, only then did he realize Tu Due was not there. The vice captain stepped up, Sister Mew drew tarot and pinned a precise address, I'll reinforce.
The chief's expression eased, do as you said.
The vice captain had barely left when worse news arrived. On the street there was an indiscriminate assault by a superpowered pair. Colleagues rushed in to stop them, 2 were gravely injured, 1 lightly hurt. The culprits were not caught and fled after injuring people, 3 can't catch 1, the chief frowned hard. The staffer sighed, at first we thought it was a lone super, but it was twins working together. Their ability is telepathic linkage, together their combat power is 2 to 3 times a singles, and they specialize in striking weaknesses.
A moment's inattention and our colleague was down.
They never make such rookie mistakes, why the lapse now, the chief muttered, head aching. Staffer, only the gravely injured 1 slipped, the other 2 were simply outmatched, Sister Mew, fanning her tarot, remarked, if the captain were there, before his partners reacted he would have already pinned the suspects.
When do you realize someone matters?
Not when he's racking up merit, but when his absence bites. The chief suddenly saw it, Tu Due truly was the go-to. Usually, call him and things got solved. Now that he was on leave, the whole unit felt like it lacked a right hand. Without Tu Due, are we supposed to fold? He snapped. Call the other departments, set up a joint cordon, and bring those criminals in. Many shops along the street were shuttered, foot.
Traffic was thin.
Some folks sat roadside at a grill stall, eating and chatting, looking carefree as if food safety meant nothing.
A passerby, curious, went up to make conversation, with how dangerous things are now, aren't you afraid of food poisoning?
Of course we're afraid, the diner laughed boldly, but fretting all day is exhausting. Better to seize the present and enjoy ourselves. Exactly, his friend drained a cup with a contented sigh, if the heavens want my life, let them take it, I'm not afraid. The passerby marveled at their free spirit, even envied it, yet when it came to himself he still tightened up and stayed cautious. Boss, 10 lamb skewers, 10 beef skewers, 10 pork belly, and give me potato slices, rice cakes, and 5 helpings of wheat gluten, a new customer ordered fearlessly, then plopped down on a roadside stool.
The passerby clicked his tongue inwardly, edged closer, and asked, "You're not afraid either?" The customer replied with flair, "As long as your body attribute is high enough, even dodgy ingredients won't poison you." The passerby, he conceded defeat, wrapped his little jacket tighter, and hurried away. In this world full of hazards, only one's own little nook felt safe. Van Han had no notion she had scared someone off. She said to Tu Due, "I heard the barbecue here is great, I've long wanted to try it." The proprietors were a couple. Husband manned the grill while the wife cleared tables. Hearing Van Han, the wife looked up, beamed with pride. "Old Trin's skewers are amazing. One bite and you'll know, you won't leave empty-handed." Seeing the two young people of similar age, well-matched and affectionate, the boss's wife guessed, "Are you newlyweds?" Tu Due. Whether the skewers were good remained to be seen, but the lady's eye for couples was delightfully generous. Van Han shook her head, then took Tu Due's hand and gave it a swing. "Lovers." "Aya, you two look perfect together," the boss's wife gushed, flinging more compliments for free. Tu Due listened and nodded earnestly, deciding her words were excellent, and took the rare chance to say a few more himself. "This time the government is really useless," a sudden curse cut in, breaking the lady's flow. Everyone paused and looked toward the voice. A drunk man at a grill with a beer had begun to act out. Seeing eyes on him, the man did not rein himself in, instead he glared back, "Did I say anything wrong?" The landslide could not be forecast, and no advance notice to evacuate danger zones. The chemical plant vented toxic gas for half a month. The situation was irretrievable before any notice came. If not for citizen reports, they would still be dozing, clueless. With performance that poor, calling them useless is putting it mildly. Diners nearby could not stand it. One swung a chair at the drunk. "They saved me twice. They saved my family. Someone even died right in front of me. You do nothing but flap your lips and curse. I don't usually fight, but if you curse them, I'll beat you to a pulp." "Why are you fighting?" "Don't," some people said, stepping in to stop it. In the end they pinned the drunk on one side and let him take a few well-aimed taps, sobering him up. Van Han, truly unimpressed by the commotion, called the police to come and take the drunk away. Watching this farce, Tu Due felt a flicker of emotion. There are those who cannot see the government's efforts and vent to feel better, but there are also those who remember kindness and repay it. Not everyone is blind and hard-hearted. Realizing this, Tu Due's view of humanity shifted a little. Before long the police arrived and, without much ado, pinned down the drunk. "What are you doing?" "I am the one who got hit." The drunken man struggled hard, yet even two officers could not hold him. Van Han was about to chop hand him when the brawler collapsed unconscious. The drunk sobered at once and rasped, "I did not even touch you. What are you faking for? Get up and explain to the police." But no matter how he shouted, the fellow lay motionless. Onlookers whispered, "If it is not injuries from the fight, could the skewers be bad? Food poisoning? Do not touch him anymore. Call for help first." That habit was ingrained. At trouble, call first. "Call what? The police are already here. If any call, then call an ambulance." The scene was chaotic. Seizing the drunk's daze, the officers snapped cuffs on him and went to check the man on the ground. "He is breathing, not dead," one officer shouted after a check. The crowd exhaled. "Not dead is good. I already called an ambulance. It should arrive soon and in time." The police were about to carry the injured man to the cruiser for the hospital when Van Han suddenly stopped them. "Do not touch him." The officers froze and instinctively heeded. Avoiding rash action, Van Han looked at the fallen youth and a transparent panel flashed on him reading, "Name, Din Hui. Thought attributes, Strength, 1.7, Agility, 1.3, Physique, 1.2, Spirit, 0.7. Current status, radioactive element poisoning, moderate, has fallen into coma." "It may be radioactive element poisoning," she explained, "without proper protective gear. Do not touch." People gasped and stepped back. How could it be radiation? Radiation poisoning causes nausea, vomiting, discomfort, and in severe cases death. It is a calamity with no easy remedy. Whoever meets it is unlucky. But how could it appear out of nowhere? The two officers exchanged a glance. One asked, "Do you know anything?" Van Han shook her head. "I do not know him. I only saw the illness by a special ability. For details, take him to the hospital and ask when he wakes." Before the police could reply, the drunk, as if doused in cold water, turned sober and blurted, "Radiation, will it spread? I fought him and touched him. Is it serious?"
will I be poisoned too? The officers actually were not clear on radiation either, yet kept a calm face. You already touched him. Panicking now is useless. Wait for the medics. The drunk burned with worry and could only endure. Beside him Van Han murmured, I want to follow to the hospital. Tu Due lowered his voice as well. Then let us go. I promised to take you out for fun, she said. Feeling a prick of guilt as they diverted to the hospital, Tu Due smiled. Whenever I go out with you accidents always happen. I am used to it. This time does not count. Next time we will make it up. All right, he agreed cheerfully, thinking that if every time with an incident does not count then perhaps she would never realize it, and he grinned wider. The ambulance arrived quickly and, upon hearing it might be radiation, the whole medical crew braced as if for battle, faces grave. How is he? Will he be all right? I had contact with him. Can it be contagious? The drunk asked. The medic said, we are not sure yet. We must take him in and run thorough tests to confirm. Then, cutting short, they hoisted the patient and sped for the hospital. I found the condition first. I would like to go along, said Van Han. The police agreed. We also need to take the troublemaker for a physical. Get in, we go together. With the cruiser clearing the way, the ride was smooth and, after a dozen odd minutes, they reached the hospital. There the brawler had been isolated. Doctors and nurses surrounded him, anxiously discussing abdominal pain, wants to vomit. The youth surfaced from the fog only to writhe in discomfort, curling into a ball. It is indeed acute radiation, the doctor concluded, face heavy. The condition is very serious. A nurse asked, do you recall touching anything strange lately? Or when did you first feel unwell? The youth stared blankly, pain surged. He clutched his belly and forced out, I remember, about a week ago my flatmate suddenly acted mysterious, said he picked up something good that could sell for a high price. From then on my hair fell badly. I slept poorly at night, no energy. Sounds like he picked up a radioactive item. The doctor reacted at once. The nurse asked, where is your flatmate? How do we find him? He answered, he does delivery runs, sometimes on foot from east to west, sometimes from south to north. He works outside every day for between 14 and 16 hours, only returns at night, radioactive material, and a runner. Working 14 to 16 hours across the entire city, the staff blanched and hurried to report upward. At the same time, Van Han's guess was confirmed. It really is radiation poisoning. Carrying a radioactive item around to spread it 14 to 16 hours a day is quite the grind. Tu Due sighed and pulled out his phone to call. The supervisor at first did not want to pick up when seeing his number, thinking a fellow with such low awareness would hardly call to ask for leave and might be phoning to sneer. But perhaps he was inquiring about recruitment to prepare for returning after the break, so he connected, tone curt. Say it fast, I am busy, news just in. Someone picked up a radioactive item and has been carrying it while doing delivery runs daily. Tu Due went straight to the point. The supervisor crashed out of his chair and, ignoring the bruise, asked, this is huge, is the intel solid? The person concerned is the flatmate and has been taken to the hospital isolation ward. His condition is said to be very severe. Tu Due rattled on, if true, the whole city could be at risk. Understanding the stakes, the supervisor dropped the posturing and asked, what do you need me to do? The patient is named Din Hui, the flatmate is Fo Min Nak, age 37, pull his file and send it to me. I will locate and capture him. This kind of dangerous subject must be caught as fast as possible. The supervisor dove into the government system to search, striving to find him first. Soon Tu Due received the dossier, and the supervisor pleaded, please, be quick, I understand, and Tu Due and Van Han raced to where Fo Min Nak should be. Only the man would not stay still and his position kept shifting. Often when they arrived he was gone. Today there was only one chance left and still no capture. Tu Due could not believe it. Is he a rabbit? Changing burrows in 3 minutes and hideouts in 5, even a rabbit would be slower. Van Han carefully reviewed his file and said, I know where he is, follow me, and led the way. About 20 minutes later, just as Fo Min Nak left an apartment block after dropping off lunchboxes, Van Han palmed his shoulder. Got you. Who are you? How can you attack people in broad daylight? I am calling the police, he snapped. Even if you do not call, we are taking you to the bureau. Van Han pressed harder. Heard you picked up something lately, hand it over. Nonsense, he denied to the death. Van Han tapped his knee with a light kick. Hand it over. That is radioactive and can kill. He staggered down in pain but still insisted. I do not understand you, liar. Then I will have to force read your memory, she sighed. And if I botch it may damage your brain and make you a fool. He jolted. No, I will talk. Where is the thing? She asked again. He bit his lip and told the truth. When I first picked it up I thought it was a treasure to sell high, but after carrying it to several places everyone said it was worthless. These days I felt unwell and suspected it was the thing, so
I casually found a place and threw it away. Van Han was speechless. That was radioactive material and he discarded it at random. Where did you dump it? She pressed. I will take you there. He struggled up. She did not lay hands on him again, only followed a short distance. Tu Due walked beside her and whispered, how did you find him? When my physique and spirit attributes reached 10, I received the saint title and a portion of authority, she said. Din Hui's radiation I could see at a glance. After I checked Fomin Nak's file, a map appeared before my eyes. The target was marked in green and I could see his whole movement trace as if he wore a tracker. When attributes reach the thresholds of 3, 6, and 9, people awaken different superpowers. For spirit alone there are hundreds. The so-called portion of authority is, I guess, access to part of that pool, including forcibly reading another's memory, he asked. She fell silent, then lowered her voice. That was a bluff. That line about botching it makes you a fool was to make him believe and confess for fear. Tu Due choked. How did he forget that in mind games she rarely loses? Sometimes she plays, sometimes she cannot be bothered. They walked in silence until he led them to a riverside. Here, I threw it in that grass. She looked around and a nameless foreboding rose, then dig it out. Frightened of being hit, he obediently rummaged but, after much searching, found nothing. I did throw it here. Why is it gone? Following his sense of danger, Tu Due moved toward the water and stopped at the bank. Come look, is it there? Peering down, the man blanched. Yes, that is the metal piece I found. Why is it on the riverbed? Likely someone mistook it for a pebble and tossed it in, Tu Due guessed. Van Han was speechless, so the radioactive item toured the city and finally sank into the river to pollute the water source. In the suffocating quiet, Tu Due dialed, I will have a team bring specialized gear to remove it. The item was a small metal cylinder about 2 to 3 centimeters long, glittering in sunlight like a rare alloy. No wonder he thought it a treasure. Soon a professional team arrived and sealed the cylinder. Afterward they would send the now radioactive scrap to a dedicated depot for storage. With the source of the accident contained, the scope would no longer expand. Though the mess would be hard to untangle, in the end a specialist sighed, notify all citizens to take time in the coming days to get a health check. The whole city issued a notice. Recently, a citizen picked up a radioactive source and even carried it on his person while working. Here is that person's itinerary. If your own route happened to intersect with it, please go to a hospital promptly for a full-body examination. Hearing this, already anxious residents saw the route map and exploded. What kind of damn job runs across the whole city 2 or 3 times a day? Couldn't avoid it, truly couldn't. The grind is insane. At a time like this you still risk your life to work, are you mad? A pocket trick of carrying a radioactive source plus a grind till you drop workaholic equals tragedy for the entire city. If the finder hadn't pushed himself so hard, I wouldn't be this despairing. Online debate roared. Offline, many realized their recent movements overlapped the source and swarmed hospitals demanding full-body checks. Some, panicking, considered moving their whole families away from this sorrowful place, only to search the net and find other cities were no better. In the eastern region, a bull-headed genius dreamed of oil running dry and vowed to split atoms to supply new energy. The idea was good, the ability there. He pored over books, consulted experts, gathered mildly radioactive items like smoke detector tubes and antique luminous dials, and finally built a homebrew reactor. Then someone reported him after townsfolk sensed abnormal radiation, with one household measured at 1,000-fold the town's baseline. The government seized and sealed the reactor and warned, strong winds and downpours can shift and release contaminants. An estimated 400,000 people may be affected. Authorities then tested the genius and his family, finding low-level contamination. During the experiments he wore only a respirator without full-body protection, and his family, unaware, thought it was a harmless hobby. The lone consolation, a crude, personal, unfinished reactor counted only as a low-level radioactive dud, so the impact remained containable. In the southeast, 2 thieves broke into a private radiotherapy research center and stole equipment they thought priceless. The next day they were dizzy with pounding headaches and badly swollen hands. A doctor at first failed to identify the cause and told them to rest at home. Relieved, they went back to dismantling the loot and pried out a capsule. Puncturing it revealed a sea blue glow inside, so wondrous they took it for a treasure and sold it dear to a scrapyard. The scrap boss saw the blue too and rejoiced, certain the toy was worth a fortune. He carried it home, gathered relatives and friends to show off the prize. Stunned by the glow, everyone asked for a share, and the boss, generous, agreed. Soon his wife felt unwell. Days later family and friends fell ill in turn. Suspecting the treasure, the wife slipped a sample into a plastic bag and took it to a hospital for measurement. Results showed high radiation. They weren't struck by some strange disease at all but acute radiation poisoning. Because the blue treasure had been parceled out and taken home by relatives and friends, once the story broke, tens of thousands rushed to hospitals for checks. In the end, more than 200 cases were confirmed as nuclear contamination. The earliest handlers, the thieves, suffered lung failure, internal hemorrhage, cardiac collapse, and died one after another. The heavily exposed, like the scrap boss's wife, had little time left. Some sneered that this family shared its blessings, only those blessings ruined the innocent. In the Northwest, a nuclear power plant leaked, more than 1 million cubic meters of radioactive water spilled and tainted the supply, and the authorities kept it under wraps for months. Worse, the Northwest is a great agricultural hub whose grain ships across the Federation every year. In the Southwest, a freight train carrying ethylene dichloride and other toxic chemicals collided and then self-ignited. The spill could not be cleared in time, so train and chemicals burned together. Neighbors said the smoke turned pitch black, billows of dense haze lingering long after. In the days that followed, people nearby felt increasingly unwell. Hospitals diagnosed poisoning and warned that staying put meant mortal danger. After reading such reports, citizens were stunned. In a federation this vast, is there not a single safe city? Some doubted, with news this big, why hadn't we heard before? I surf listings every day to buy homes. A tactful soul reminded them, to prevent social panic, push notifications were banned long ago, only manual searches reveal this kind of news. Everyone fell silent. Without noticing, they'd been marooned on an isolated isle. What was not meant for the masses simply would not appear before their eyes. Someone asked, not doubt or rage, but a sincere question, in this environment, how do ordinary people survive? No one answered, as if no one believed they themselves could. Long after, a reply came, work hard to save others and raise the 4 attributes as much as possible. If the body attribute is high enough, you won't fall ill even drinking tainted water or eating contaminated grain. Fight with everything you have to live, until you truly cannot. Congratulations to the player for surviving in dungeon number 208,731, radioactive element contamination incident. Because you indirectly saved 165,439 humans, your clearance rating is SSS, reward attribute points. Strength +1, Agility +1, Constitution +1, Spirit +1. Your current attributes are Strength 10, Agility
NK
10,
books.
Constitution 10, Spirit 10, total 40. Yun Han sighed, maxed out, and casually closed the interface. Congratulations to the player for surviving in dungeon number 208,731, radioactive element contamination incident. Because you participated throughout and indirectly saved 165,439 humans, your clearance rating is SS, reward attribute points, Strength +0.6, Agility +0.7, Constitution +0.6, Spirit +0.7. Your current attributes are Strength 9.5, Agility 9.5, Constitution 10, Spirit 10, total 39. Note 1, each single attribute caps at 10, after reaching 10 it will no longer rise. Note 2, you have Constitution 10 and Spirit 10, congratulations on becoming the 3rd full-set saint. Note 3, when any single attribute reaches 10, you obtain the saint title and a measure of authority, please explore specifics yourself. Xiao Dui skimmed the prompts and looked away. The supervisor held the latest report, feelings mixed. Xiao Dui claimed to be on vacation yet had no rest at all. Even a skewer run led him to a radioactive source and the rescue of an entire city. With potential like this, was locking him in an office not a waste? Being a supervisor meant being good at self-reflection. He wondered if he had meddled too much before. The next second the fantasy shattered, the story's clear, the person's back, I'm leaving. The supervisor swallowed his words and sighed. How could he nitpick a great better he shoulder the grime and grind himself? Yun Han waited outside. Not wanting her to wait, Xiao Dui hurried his steps. No sooner had he turned out through the main gate of the Special Rescue Division than a masked man blocked his path. Got a minute, the man invited. No, Xiao Dui said, brushing past without a glance. She treats you like a little pup. With your strength and standing now, what could you not get? Why obsess over being her dog? The masked man pressed. Xiao Dui paused. The man continued, we've met, years ago. We both ran from home for different reasons and later crossed paths in a small eatery, doing under-the-table work. The owner pitied us, gave us food and lodging, even paid 800 a month. Good days were short, a do-gooder reported him, the shop was shut, you went home to a violent father, and I returned to the welfare home to be tortured. You and I both know how absurd this world is, we've seen it with our own eyes. We should have been the best partners, building our ideal home together. Zhao Jun, Xiao Dui recalled the boy who shared his lot, a father who cheated and sired a child with another woman, a mother who begged to keep the marriage only to be scorned and told to divorce. Her mind broke, and one night while the husband slept, she took a cleaver. The father died, the mother was jailed. Zhao Jun went to the welfare home, a place rife with bullying where kids loathed the killer's son. After suffering enough, Zhao Jun fled. Around then, Xiao Dui also ran from his violent biological father, and the two boys met. You do remember me, the masked man brightened. In his mind, the world was vast but only the two of them were the same kind, ordinary folk could not understand, so a single reunion and a brief talk should make Xiao Dui drop his stance and join him. Instead, Xiao Dui answered gravely, some people, even if they call others human, still trample them in passing, some, if they call others dogs, go so far that their treatment is beneath beasts. But she, even if you say she keeps me like a little pup, has never once crossed a line. She cherishes me, respects me, understands and shields me. Glimpses of the future showed Xiao Dui decisive and ruthless, yet here he looked like a love-struck fool. The masked man choked. The evolution game first covered only your town, you were among the first awakened. How do you know she didn't take you in for your power? Xiao Dui fell into doubtful silence. The other urged, humans are like that, they're good to you when you're useful. Don't be fooled. Think of their faces after the evolution game went public, how they became obsequious once they learned you were a noble super ability user. Others might, she would not, Xiao Dui said slowly. The masked man went mute, doomed, love brain, incurable. Xiao Dui added, she awakened before me, and to this day I still cannot beat her. Truly, he admitted, she simply dislikes using force, she fights very well. When I was little and wanted to learn martial arts, she taught me. Zhao Jun was truly bold, he felt the so-called love brain was a new species, and as a human he simply could not communicate with someone ruled by a love brain. Xiao Dui, oblivious, even flaunted her affection, saying that even if everyone else failed she would be the only exception. At last Zhao Jun realized that shards of the future were only shards of the future, while reality was still reality. In reality Xiao Dui had never considered abandoning her own stance to change camps, he was highly satisfied with the status quo and had no wish to change the world. Foolish, to be bewitched by a woman until you lose your mind. Zhao Jun cursed inwardly, yet outwardly remained steady, saying, if you do not wish it, I will not force you, and the tidbits revealed in their talk were not enough to expose him as someone on the wanted list. Xiao Dui, unaware, turned and left without a trace of reluctance once things were made clear. Zhao Jun stayed where he was, face overcast, thinking. It seems this world will not change into the form I like, then let it be destroyed. Because the original radiation source was contained from further spread and countless innocent civilians were saved, Van Han slept sweetly that night, the sleep quality leaping a whole grade, but when she woke the next day, the world had changed. Congratulations, the entire server now has 4 saints, a single attribute raised to 10, the game has ended. Van Han was stunned, first wondering why every crucial event always happened while she slept. Was there to be no chance to object? Second, had the evolution game simply ended and would the disaster end with it? She immediately went online, where searches were flooded with game ended and evolution game disappeared. Opening a random post she saw people laughing that the game was over and they had finally lived to sing the full victory chorus, proof being that one was hit by a car that morning, and with a toughened body and thick skin only felt a bit dizzy after the fall and, after a long wait, received no system attribute reward prompt. Others yelled to know who the 4 saints were so they could worship them instead of the god of wealth. Someone marveled that their highest attribute was only 2.2 while others had 10. How many lives must that have saved? Another said, who cares how many were saved, the apocalypse is over, humanity wins. Amid cheers some wept, saying they had acute radiation poisoning and were counting on grinding evaluations to add physique and survive, but with the game gone, how would they live? Others complained the player experience was awful, appearing suddenly and disappearing even more suddenly, that they had just adapted and resolved to grind attributes to do something great when the game vanished, yet those minor discords could not dent the joy. The haze overhead dissipated, the pressure of half a year made people like huskies suddenly freed, calling friends to go out and play. Some planned to travel, some to eat at restaurants, some to gather at pubs. Only then did many discover countless numbers would not connect, either no one answered, accounts had no credit, or numbers were cancelled. Generally phone numbers do not change, especially for working folks, so if they do, either there is a compelling reason or the owner is no more. The government gave no figures, but civic groups estimated the Federation's population had dropped by at least 1/4 in this disaster, though that was less than 3/10. The base was huge and every number stood for a life. Survivors sighed, then they cut loose, they played, they rejoiced as if reborn. A few cautioned, we have not yet parsed the system's notice, why congratulate already? What if it is a plot and gathering just gifts heads? Suspicious how these people survived, after so long still not learned caution. Can we not wait for clarity? But nothing happened. Groups met happily, parted happily, then happily posted and uploaded photos. Gradually more believed the disaster had passed, humanity had beaten the game and completed evolution, and every survivor was a hero. A direct sign was that special rescue departments saw very few new cases each day and backlogs were cleared quickly. Civil servants even clocked off early, took leave, and finally slept well. Everything was improving. After a month, with no large-scale violent incidents, initial vigilance eased. In contrast, Shadoué bought a villa and stocked it with many supplies, telling delivery workers an ounce of prevention, and when they left, Van Hahn softly asked if he also felt uneasy. Shadoué nodded and slowly said, a storm is coming. That night, Van Hahn dreamt long, oil ran dry, coal was exhausted, common energy sources were gathered to nothing, the heat grew abnormal, the sun like a giant oven baking the ground until it burned, rivers shrank and exposed their beds. Indoors the air conditioner could not run because there was no energy to produce enough electricity. Humans ate ration staples and drank inferior water, relying on their bodies to tank the extreme heat. She woke with a start and suddenly grasped the evolution game's meaning. Without evolution, humanity might perish under aberrant natural conditions. Only with evolution could the species persist. It was a precognitive dream, and what she saw would soon be reality's threat. The department head had truly enjoyed easy days of late, few tasks this month, no overtime, clock in and clock out, even burning accrued leave. He was just planning to take 3 connected days from Saturday through Monday for a trip when Shadoué appeared and gravely delivered ill news. Energy was running out. At first the head thought it a joke, laughing that oil could not simply run out, that a new field had been found a few years back, and even if oil ended there was still coal, not to mention wind, hydro, solar and other clean sources. But Shadoué's solemn face did not match a jest. The head put away his smile and asked if he was serious. Shadoué nodded. He had a premonition. It had been about a month since the game ended, and people had noticed that while the game stopped, attribute gains and superpowers remained. If a superpower sensed it, then the disaster might indeed come. The head pondered. Oil and coal are non-renewables requiring geologic ages to form. If they end, we would rely on wind, hydro, and solar. Then he remembered nuclear fusion, thinking of the sun shining by hydrogen fusion, and also of that bull who built a nuclear reactor at home. Reports said he dreamed of oil depletion and so resolved to do a fission experiment to find new energy. Everything clicked. Perhaps the man truly had a prophetic dream and so dared kitchen table science. But who among ordinary folk would tinker with something so dangerous? So no one considered him a seer and just called it rambling. Summer is nigh, and if we meet heat beyond expectation, wind and hydro will be affected. Shadoué warned. At present the only hope is solar. The head fell silent, for in our time solar is not yet the main source of power. Though clean and renewable, it has many issues: unstable output with rainy spells, heavy cloud, and night, conversion efficiency limited, commonly around 10 to 20%, so most irradiation does not become electricity, costs still high despite declines, including panels, equipment, installation, and maintenance, and storage technology is immature because generation is intermittent. We must store surplus for round-the-clock use, but storage is costly and the device's performance and lifespan are not encouraging. In short, expensive, constrained, impractical, not people-friendly in price, unripe in technology, hence underbuilt. Yet now a single straw to clutch, a thought that made his head ache. The matter is grave, he said. I will report up immediately, leaving the countermeasures to superiors to struggle with.
Come June, the heat grew worse, lie on the ground and it scalded, long. Exposure under the sun caused burns and fainting, people cried too hot, I cannot stand it, some said my physique attribute of 1.7 still cannot bear it, so they cranked air conditioners, went swimming, ate ice pops, folks lounged under shade feeling life was back. Meanwhile governments poured funds into round-the-clock construction of solar plants and posted notices inviting players with the Saint title to register locally. The uninitiated public did not care, only gossiped over tea and wine. Hearing the word on the wind, the next day Van Haan went with Xiao Duwei to the Special Rescue Department to sign up. The head solemnly said that family members were not to be brought during work hours. Van Haan introduced herself as the first player to earn the Saint title. The head blinked. Xiao Duwei pointed to himself as the third saint, so they had come to discuss work. Van Haan asked who the second and fourth saints were. For others, one would first vet character before sharing secrets, but with a single warning call Van Haan had blocked several major disasters. Without her peculiar ability the boss of Universal likely would not have lived 3 months and the government would already have taken over, proving that if she harbored ill will she could grievously wound the Federation by doing nothing, yet she had not and had saved people earnestly throughout, showing reliable character. Thus the head replied at ease. The fourth saint had not contacted the government. The second was Cat Hai, a civil servant and superpower of the spirit attribute, who had traveled nationwide to stop disasters, barely sleeping, and after the game ended took a month off to rest at home. Van Haan then asked why to contact the saints. The head said gravely the government had quietly dispatched inspections confirming energy was indeed nearing depletion, and that an extreme heat disaster loomed, requiring everyone to find ways to face it. Van Haan briefly described her dream, the sky hot as if 10 suns hung high, with insufficient electricity people could only rely on their own bodies to endure, next rivers would dry, and for days even everyday drinking water would be in question. Books. Without adequate potable water, life could not persist and many people would be culled. The head was shocked and instinctively looked to Xiao Duwei, who affirmed with certainty that Van Haan's is a precognitive dream and what she said was true. The head was speechless. He had called them to devise measures, not to steep the room in anxiety. Van Haan continued, dinosaurs perished around an ice age, and humanity could well perish from abnormal extreme heat. This is reasonable. If the evolution game had not raised a portion of physiques and sharpened perception, humanity would likely have met total annihilation in ignorance. In an instant the head felt his world flip. So the evolution game was in fact a good thing that should not have ended so soon. The game had been over only a short while. Humanity had enjoyed just a few days of ease. How had things already reached so wild a conclusion? The person in charge talked with Van Haan for quite a while, but his blood pressure only kept rising, as he still couldn't get any constructive advice. As for Van Haan, when she heard that the government was looking for saints, she came to report, signed up, and then left right away. Watching her unbothered figure walk off, the person in charge turned to Xiao Duwei and asked, why does she look not the least bit worried? Xiao Duwei thought for a moment and replied, the worst outcome is the extinction of humankind. If one doesn't fear death, then there's nothing left to worry about. The person in charge fell silent, thinking, you're talking about yourself, aren't you, working diligently? But if we talk about caring for humanity's future, then no, you don't. Every day you clock in on time, study terrain, clock out, free and easy as though not part of mankind, indifferent to whether the species would vanish in the next second. Truly, birds of a feather flock together, the family shares the same temperament. The person in charge sighed and changed the subject. Let's go, there's still a lot to prepare before officially entering the hardship phase. The evolution game disappeared. That's great, finally we can play in peace. The crowd in the streets surged, the atmosphere lively, faces beaming with bright smiles, no one realizing what awaited them next. Van Haan breathed in the festive air and walked home step by step, when suddenly her phone vibrated. She pulled it out. Recently, swimming pools were abnormally booming, several urgently hiring. The boss pushed HR to spread invites everywhere, and as a result, Van Haan received an interview notice. She paused, originally planning to stay home through the coming extreme heat, but since someone called for an interview, she might as well go. She skipped home and headed excitedly to the pool. After meeting, the interviewer skipped small talk and went straight to the point. Can you swim? Yes. How many years? Got a certificate. I awakened a superpower in swimming, know all the techniques, can stay underwater for several hours with ease. After her 4 attributes reached 10, she gained various strange powers, and expert swimming was one of them. Her unexpected answer made the interviewer pause before asking again, if hired, when can you start? Tomorrow? Or now, since you're short-staffed, such awareness? The interviewer instantly nodded, you're hired. From now on, you're a reserve lifeguard, stationed by the pool, specializing in rescuing drowning or cramping swimmers. When you have time, remember to get your certificate. Okay, she replied obediently. After registration, the interviewer led Van Han and another girl to the poolside, introducing, "This is Tong Xiao, call her Sister Tong, you'll follow her from now on, Sister Tong." The other girl chirped sweetly, "Alright, I'll keep an eye on the rookies, you can go." With the handover done, the interviewer left to see other candidates. The new girl named Huang Hin Fuang curiously looked around. "Sister Tong, I worked at a pool before, but weren't most lifeguards men?" Tong Xiao asked back. "If you think this job's only for men, why take it?" Huang scratched her face shyly. "I owe some money, my period's coming, I really need a job fast." Tong then explained, "Before, it was mostly men because drowning people thrash and can drag rescuers under, and women's strength tends to be less, so it was risky. But things are different now, strength no longer depends on size or gender, even a petite woman can have more power than an average man, so we only judge by ability now." Huang looked around again. "This big pool has only 3 lifeguards?" "Of course not." Tong snapped her fingers. "Those 2 guys are senior lifeguards." Once a female guest nearly drowned and later minded being rescued by a man, so the boss decided to have both genders on staff. Huang mumbled to herself, "Does a pool really need that many lifeguards? Feels like this job won't last long." Just as the thought arose, a kid yelled "cramp" and rushed in the water. 2 male lifeguards dove in fast and hauled the child ashore. Tong's expression turned serious. "Don't think this job's easy, you must give it your full attention, be ready anytime. During your shift always watch if anyone needs emergency rescue." "Isn't that too exaggerated?" Huang asked timidly. "When I swam as a customer, I never saw that many accidents." Tong sneered. "By rule, customers must warm up fully before entering the pool, but many ignore it, or barely stretch before diving in. There's a shallow zone for kids and beginners, and we tell them every time not to go into the deep zone, but every day we end up rescuing people who swim beyond their level. Also, when you're tired, rest, we remind them constantly, but some insist, saying I can do it, just a bit more, then get exhausted, and we must dive in to pull them up." Huang was speechless, thinking how could these adults be worse listeners than preschoolers? Tong continued, "I'm not being a capitalist boss making you devote every second to work, it's just this job can't afford distraction." Once, 2 lifeguards worked together. One went to the restroom and told the other, who said okay but then met a friend and started chatting. Meanwhile a swimmer cramped up mid-pool, no one noticed. Luckily, another guest saved them, otherwise, she didn't finish. But Huang's imagination already scared her. Being a lifeguard could even lead to lawsuits. "Have you 2 ever swum in a bay?" Tong asked. Huang hesitated. "Yes, but just enough to not drown. Later I faced danger, luckily survived, awakened a swimming-related power, and got better instantly." Van Han said, "I used to be like a duck on land, never touched water, wouldn't go near ponds or rivers, but after awakening my power, I'm no longer afraid of water." Tong nodded. "Good, sit here and watch how I work. In 3 days or a week you'll learn the ropes." Huang actually wanted to quit, but thinking of her debts, she forced herself to sit, muttering, "If heaven gave me this talent, it'd be a waste not to use it." Clearly convincing herself, Van Han listened to the chatter and sighed inwardly. Soon they'd face an extreme heat wave. She had awakened a swimming power but evolved down the wrong path. The first day passed peacefully. The next morning before opening hours, the pool received government notice due to power grid issues. Starting today the city would implement rotating blackouts. Area A had electricity from 6 to 8 in the morning, 10 to 12 at night. Area B from 8 to 10 in the morning, 6 to 8 at night. Area C from 10 to 12 in the morning, 8 to 10 at night. The announcement dropped and the whole city exploded. What era is this? And we still don't have free electricity. NK Books. This looks long-term. Why, what's wrong with the grid? Can't they just fix it? I'm moving out. This cursed place isn't livable. People searched online and were dumbfounded. Every city in the Federation issued similar statements, all cutting power, not one spared. Did terrorists attack the grid? I don't get it. It's blazing hot, and you tell me no fan, no AC, no power, trying to roast us alive. I just said my physique stats high. This summer's less suffocating, breathing smoother than last year, and now I'm told to endure? No way, good body, or not, AC stays on. Tell me, how can companies still operate with such schedules? No power for computers. What work can we even do? Hey upstairs, ditch your desktop. Use a laptop with spare batteries, still doable, but whether workers faint from heat, that's another matter. I was ready to take leave, and you tell me to use a laptop? Thanks a lot, guess no break for me. Huang panicked. What do we do? Could it be that right after I start,
The company closes and we all lose our jobs. Originally, the pool had AC, warm showers, a comfy environment, but now only the pool itself remained usable. No AC, no hot water, Van Han said. It won't be that bad, trusting her boss that the trial period would at least last a few days. Indeed, by afternoon the pool was packed. People yelling it's too hot while rushing into the water, stripping, changing, diving in one after another. Once submerged, instant relief washed over them. The vending machine's empty, someone called, so Tong told the two male lifeguards and led Van Han and Huang to restock drinks. After refilling, a long queue formed. Customers eagerly cracked bottles, gulping half at once, feeling refreshed and reborn. Isn't that too much? Huang began but was cut off by ambulance sirens outside. Looking through the window, they saw someone collapse on the street. Bystanders quickly moved them under shade from the burning road. The ambulance arrived, medics lifted the person and sped away. Witnessing this, Huang's first reaction was, what a pity the evolution game ended. The passerby who saved a heatstroke victim wouldn't even get a stat reward anymore. Then realizing her own thought, she flushed in embarrassment. What's wrong with me? Have I gone crazy? Why am I missing that game? The vending machine is jammed again. Get someone over here. Not far away the customers were in an uproar. Tong Qiu, helpless, could only lead Van Han and Hong and Fuang back to the stockroom. At high noon the three of them weren't allowed a proper break and had to haul stacks of drinks, with lines always forming at the machine. Hong and Fuang half-suspected people came to the pool not to swim but to buy cold drinks. So the moment there was a sliver of downtime she grabbed a sports drink and gulped it down in big swigs. After a good chug she finally eased up, eyes vacant at the ceiling, dazed. I was hired as a lifeguard, not a lab tech or a porter. The job description before entry and the work after entry had nothing to do with each other, downright deceitful. Tong Qiu comforted her. These days are scorching, and there's power rationing. We can't run the air conditioner all day, everyone's bound to be tired and thirsty. Give it a few more days for the grid repairs and things will return to normal. Instead of soothe, Hong Hin Fuang was reminded, right, when I go home tonight it'll still be out all night. Thinking that, she scratched her head in pain. I've seen plenty of incidents and consider myself battle-tested, but midsummer blackouts are a first. Before the grid is fixed, how are we supposed to live? Tong Qiu kept quiet. Ever since the chronicle began, pay the bill and you used electricity freely. Having money yet no power had never happened, so she didn't know how to cope either. Van Han came over handing out a few ice pops. Have one and cool off a bit. Embarrassed, Hong Yin Fuang gave a small smile and murmured, sorry, I ramble when I'm nervous. When you hit something you've never faced, who doesn't go wide-eyed and flustered? Tong Qiu didn't mind. She took the ice pop, tore the wrapper, and bit off a mouthful. You two get anxious too? Hong Yin Fuang was surprised, knowing full well among the three only she chattered non-stop. She didn't mean to but couldn't help it. I'm thinking of solutions, said Tong Qiu. Van Han added, when I bought the ice pops I overheard customers, thought a few ideas were worth borrowing. Some planned to buy wooden tubs and soak in cold water at home, some planned to dig an ice vault, survive this summer first and talk later. An ice vault? Hong Yin Fuang paused. In old times without electricity, winter ice could be stored for summer use. With modern tech there's no reason we can't, said Van Han. At that moment a spark seemed to light in Hong Hin Fuang, her brain spinning fast. At the same time Tong Qiu frowned. Speaking of storing ice, that reminds me of the fridge. If there's only a fixed window of power each day then the freshness-keeping function is basically gone. When the notice first came she only fretted about no air conditioning and didn't think of the fridge. Not until just now did she start to worry about all the food in the freezer. Van Han nodded. People are already saying the food in the fridge has fermented and stinks, inedible. Tong Qiu's heart lurched as she realized the situation was more serious than she'd imagined. That night, after a day of toil, Tong Qiu dragged her tired body home. As soon as the door opened a sour rot hit her nose. She held her breath and instinctively groped for the light switch, pressed it over and over with no response. Only then, remembering her neighborhood only had power from 10 at night to midnight, she pulled out her phone, turned on the flashlight, opened the fridge, and hurried to toss anything foul. A fridge that had been about 7/10 full was suddenly empty. She ran downstairs in the night to dump the trash, came back up and it was near 9 o'clock. Her phone was at 43% but couldn't be charged. The water heater needed power, so no warm shower, even the usual warm tub was electric. Without power almost nothing could be done. She took a deep breath, steadied herself, dug out a stainless kettle for bath water, washed it inside and out 3 times, filled it halfway and set it on the stove to boil, then poured the water into a glass carafe and let it cool naturally. After that she tried a cold shower, and soon discovered the heat stored in her body was stubbornly radiating. A cold wash felt not only uncomfortable but not clean. After a bit of scrubbing she dressed, hair dripping,
and sat on a rickety chair waiting for the power window. She didn't know how long had passed when the ceiling light snapped on like a signal, as if leaping straight from a wild age into civilization. She sprang up and headed for a hot shower. Half an hour later, having washed away grime and fatigue, she felt reborn. Only one thing was off: it was her usual bedtime, yet the shower left her bright awake and no longer sleepy. Ignoring routine, she turned on the air conditioner for comfort and plugged in her phone. A little after 11 o'clock she put the phone down and forced herself to sleep. If she didn't doze off before midnight, the later heat and fatigue would make it even harder. Worn out from the day, she had barely shut her eyes before drifting off. Her last thought before sleep was thank goodness her building's power window was from 10 to 12 at night. On the third workday, Hong and Fuang showed up before Tong Chio and Van Han with panda eyes. One glance and Tong Chio knew. Rough night? Hong and Fuang looked at Tong Chio, then at Van Han, aghast. Hot and stifling all night, not a breath of wind, and you two still slept, Tong Chio said. Pure luck. I switched on the air conditioner and drifted off before the cut. Slept so deeply I never woke and then it was dawn. Jealous, Hong and Fuang groaned. Who can bear a window from 6 to 8 at night? Basically she hadn't even reached home before outage time. Do a little tidying and the cut arrived. Whether one could sleep afterward depended entirely on one's own effort, Van Han said. When the power came I filled basins of water and froze them. After the cut I put them in the bedroom. It gave a little cool air. Hearing that, Hong and Fuang's eyes lit up. How effective is it? Does it work? A bit. Better than nothing, said Van Han. In truth her constitution was strong, with many extraordinary abilities. Heat and cold hardly fazed her now. Besides the basins and the freezer, she had ice hidden in her cellar and a large stock of quicklime to make ice at will. I'll try it at home, said Hong and Fuang. In the afternoon the pool was packed, nearly at overload. Why are there so many people? The veteran male guard panted in sweat. On one hand it was truly hot and homes had no air conditioning so sweat poured. On the other, with crowds like this, what if someone quietly drowned out of sight? The thought scared him. As he worried, someone walking past him suddenly shut their eyes and collapsed. Not good. Heat stroke. He rushed to help, but before reviving that person, another nearby grew woozy and fell as if staging a stunt. Van Han caught the head deftly so it wouldn't crack on the floor. What do we do now? Hong and Fuang began to panic. Start chest compressions, have them sip saline, then call and wait for the ambulance, Tong Chio directed, and Hong and Fuang obeyed at once. While the lifeguards spun like tops, customers ringed around watching and whispering. So many people fainting from heat today, this is the 5th one I've seen. Something feels off. Last year at 42 degrees I wasn't this miserable. This year the forecast says 40 and I feel chest tight and short of breath. Like I need an oxygen tank. The past half year toughened me up. My stats clearly improved. It isn't that my body got worse. So does the forecast have issues, like it's really 50 but they say 40? I think it's because last year we could run the air conditioner. This year no power, no cooling. For 20 hours a day we're hot and dehydrated. How can ordinary people stand it? Why is it that after the evolution game ended there's no sense of rebirth at all? Things are obviously harsher. Before it was one mishap after another, dull blades cutting. Now we face the extreme heat trial together. Whoever can't hold out is eliminated on the spot. Far crueler than the evolution game. As talk went on the wind shifted and the onlookers began cursing the government. Those people eat and do nothing. How long has rationing lasted? Why isn't the grid repaired to restore normal supply? Modern city and you only allow 4 hours of power a day. What a joke. You could lead a pig on stage and it might perform better. In our complex an elder got heatstroke during a nap and passed in his sleep. If they don't fix the grid in a couple of days it'll be my turn. While steadying a fainter, Van Han listened and thought the public's doubts had begun. Who knew how long the authorities could hold out? Because the scolding was relentless and the official page was boiling. That night an expert came to debunk. Summer hardship isn't just because air temperatures are high, humidity matters too. Then launched into a fluent lecture. The netizens were like, you think I don't understand so you can fool me? The expert bristled. This has scientific grounding, and a passerby offered a plain explanation. Simply put, humidity affects sweat evaporation. If it evaporates fast you dehydrate easily. If it evaporates slowly you don't feel cool and may get dizzy, cramp, nauseous, or tachycardic. The explanation was clear yet the people didn't want to hear it. They only cared about when the power system would be fixed. Turn on air conditioning and the problem is gone. I might not understand heatstroke theory but I know the solution. Midsummer rationing deserves censure. Cut the nonsense. We want one thing, loosen power supply. And when talk turned to restoring normal supply, the expert's fire died and he went silent as the grave. Just then others popped up. even without all day electricity life doesn't have to suffer. Here's a method to preserve ice. Make ice with quicklime, simple and effective. 5 steps to sleep through till dawn. People were stunned. Are you crazy? Blackouts aren't normal. Wake up and stop letting them program your head. Press the government to repair quickly. Once fixed, everything's fine. Why force ourselves to adapt? Self-improvement is good, but don't rush to correct yourself first. Learn to find the cause in others. Van Haan could see it. The authorities were striving to steer public opinion and teach self-rescue, but folks weren't buying it. The notice said system malfunction, so the people waited wholeheartedly for repairs and even stood watch of their own accord. For certain considerations, the government did not plan to reveal the real cause of rationing, and so it dragged on. 1 day, then 2, then 3. Come the 7th day, the grid was still not repaired and the public snapped and surged. If it isn't fixed, how do hospitals keep running? All I want is to spend a little money to run my air conditioner. How is that so hard? I kept my mouth shut for a whole week because I trusted you. And what did you achieve? With that much time you could have not only fixed a fault but built a new system. You betrayed our trust. Give a reasonable explanation or don't blame me for going berserk right here. The authorities clammed up with no reply. In the silence, rumors rose on all sides. Our ordinary folks ration while officials sit in offices with air conditioning. I can't fathom why they aren't anxious. How many have collapsed from heat? How many went to sleep and never woke? The situation is severe yet they act blind. I suspect they haven't told the truth. Outside isn't really 44 and rationing isn't due to a malfunction. Not a single explanation. What exactly are they? Maneuvering. As the credibility crisis grew, a conspiracy theory soared. Collusion of interests. It must be collusion. The electricity saved by the people is redirected under the table to the rich. The venom of such talk lies in how plausible it sounds. And to refute it, the slandered side is forced to come out and clarify the truth. In a blink, the authorities were shoved to the crest of the wave. The outside world would not allow silence. Words pressed in and facts struck, forcing them to take a stand. Lan Han watched in silence and thought, how is this path any different from the public launch of the evolution game half a year ago? History loves to repeat. Humans keep stepping on the same rake. Make a mistake and then make it again, knowing the last day of vacation should be for homework yet still playing until the countdown day, knowing all-nighters hurt the body yet still scrolling the phone till dawn, wanting to lose weight yet failing to control mouth and feet, writing pledge after pledge yet doing nothing when it matters. People are like that. Say one thing, think another, act a third. Lan Han wondered how long the government could hold out this time when last time it buckled under pressure. The next day, before the pool opened, the crew was already setting up when Hong and Phuong came over with a few odd bottles, said nothing, and misted Lan Han and Tong Kio with a burst. What? Tong Kio jumped, then instantly felt a chill like sitting under aircon, and asked in surprise, what are you doing? Hong and Phuong said with pride, a friend tipped me to a great gadget, a cooling mist bottle, 1 light spray and in about 10 seconds it frosts up. With this, even if the power is out and the AC cannot run, we are fine. Lan Han, who handles heat well, was not spooked. She had the normal-looking can, pressed the button and white mist jets out. The principle unclear but the coolness real. Hong and Phuong explained it is a newly developed product, not widely circulated. She had not known either until a friend told her. She tried it, found it good, and got some to use. Besides spraying people, it works other ways too. Wait a sec. She dashed off and came back with a few room-temperature drinks, set them on the floor, and sprayed madly, and right away a layer of frost formed outside the bottles like they had been in a fridge. Tong Kio cracked one open, sipped, and found it cool and refreshing. Grinning, Hong and Phuong chilled 2 more and handed one to Lan Han, adding that she brought a few bottles and if anyone felt hot she would spray them, though the stuff, while effective, gets used up fast, and she tossed the just-emptied can into the trash. Tempted, Tong Kio asked where to buy, how to use, whether it was safe, saying if it worked she would stock up. Hong and Phuong passed over a bottle to read, saying the precautions were printed on the can. 1. When spraying a person, keep the nozzle at least 30 centimeters away to avoid frostbite. 2. Do not spray toward an open flame because it contains alcohol and is flammable. 3. The cooling effect is instantaneous and there is a faint odor. 4. Store in a cool shaded place and do not expose to sun. The notes were thorough. Tong Kio asked for the website to order, and Hong and Phuong said add her as a friend and she would share the shop. While the two were busy adding contacts, Lan Han opened her backpack, peeled back layers of insulating material, and took out ice packs the size of bricks. I was afraid you would overheat, so I brought ice. Dropping cubes into drinks also works to cool down. The ice pack was a grid of 4 by 6 small squares, together about the size of A4 paper, easy to snap off a few cubes for use. Eyes round, Hong and Phuong gasped. Your place has electricity at what hours and cutoffs at what hours? How are the ice blocks still frozen in your bag, not melted at all? Lan Han said she wrapped the frozen blocks in multiple layers of insulating material and sealed them in a bag, so they did not melt. Hong and Fuang looked puzzled, while Tong Kio recalled a grade school experiment, whether an object is very hot or very cold. If wrapped tightly in insulating material and put in a sealed container, it will hold for a long time. Hearing that, Hong and Fuang began to doubt she had ever gone to school. Lan Han snapped off 6 cubes to use and stuffed the rest back in, saying if a customer got heatstroke and collapsed, she could wrap a cube in a towel and press it to cool them. Tong Kio smiled wryly. That you do not know how useless you were until something happens, compared to a friend who scouts new products and shares freely, and Lan Han who remembers knowledge and applies it. She felt herself far behind. Tong Kio offered to cook mung bean sweet soup and asked if anyone wanted some. After a hard choice, Hong and Fuang decided to drink the chilled beverage first and the sweet soup later. As they talked, Lan Han wrapped 2 cubes in towels to make simple cooling pads and handed one to each. Press this to your face. Delighted, Hong and Fuang cheered inside. Colleagues are awesome. I love this place. From now on, the pool is my second home. The power restrictions kept going. 8 days, 9 days, 10 days, all the way to the 15th day with no return to normal. People baked into madness roared. A system glitch needing maintenance time is understandable, but it has been half a month. Do you know how I have survived? Someone said they wanted to crawl along the internet cables to bite people. Not joking, that is how our newly once sane citizens go berserk. Others wondered what kind of failure could force power limits across every city in the Federation at once. They had trusted the government and resisted conspiracy talk, but silent non-denials and no explanations shook faith. Some shouted, "Speak plainly, if the evolution game could be announced, what cannot be said?" Others cried that too many had died already. Every day people pass, before it reaches me at least let me know what happened, let me die understanding. Someone argued the biggest problem is not citizens distrusting the government but the government distrusting citizens. After going through the evolution game, what truth could we not bear? Proposals rose to hold another nationwide plebiscite, still brooding over the prior result and wanting to prove a referendum could lead to a good outcome. Such words sound sympathetic yet are pressure in disguise. Refusing to clarify equals refusing to trust the people. Under a powerful wave of opinion, the government finally could not bear it and issued a notice. Humanity is facing a serious challenge. For certain reasons, details cannot be made public. Please trust the government to do its utmost. If you trust, choose in the nationwide vote. Trust the government will handle it well. If you do not, choose do not trust the government. I must know the truth. The referendum would end in 3 days, and whether to disclose would be decided by the vote. Every citizen could vote, and failing to do so in time would be deemed a waiver. With the last experience fresh, activists ran about urging, if you do not know what you are voting on, pick waiver. Think back to half a year ago. Think of the evolution game. But that backfired. If we made it through the evolution game, what is there to fear? Everyone here is a winner from that trial. Even disaster will not cow us. Many, worn down by months of anxious living, had meant to choose unconditional trust in the government. But friends and neighbors swayed them. They only asked to run aircon 24 hours, a tiny everyday thing. Yet the government refused. Too strange. And thinking of the flashy rumors online, what if some were true? In the end they switched to must know the truth. Another portion ignored all persuasion, insisting that if the government said details could not be disclosed there must be a reason, and they gave unconditional support and trust. 3 days flashed by and the vote tallied roughly as follows. The no confidence choice around 55%. Waivers around 12%, confidence around 33%, with no confidence winning clearly. Though there had been struggling, history still repeated. With no other option, the official account had to reveal the truth. Energy is depleted, petroleum and coal are almost exhausted, so normal power supply is impossible. Personnel have been dispatched to set up solar plants in cities to convert sunlight into electricity to sustain a basic supply and keep urban operation at a minimal level. Once the notice came out, the whole internet erupted. No one expected the cause to be energy exhaustion. Before disclosure, everyone bragged we could take it. After hearing it, there was only despair. In this brutal heat, electricity cannot return to normal, and how can ordinary people survive? This problem is beyond us. Some lamented that curiosity kills the cat, and this time the cat is me. Others asked if without oil and coal there are truly no other ways to generate power. What about wind? What about water? Can diesel run generators? Think of alternatives. Rebuttals landed at once. This summer there is almost no wind. Where to get wind for turbines? As for hydro, water levels at dams are down, rivers have dried to exposed beds. How to spin turbines? Using diesel is even funnier since diesel is refined from petroleum. and if oil is gone, where does diesel come from? Someone added that gasoline too comes from petroleum, which explains the recent insane price spikes. The source is about to snap, a calmer voice summarized. Refined petroleum yields for main categories: fuels, lubricants, asphalt,
NK
and solvents. Fuels include kerosene, gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel, used across cars, ships, aircraft, rockets, trains, and boilers. Hence, oil is called the blood of industry. Everyone is anxious but should discuss calmly, with oil gone. Suggesting diesel as a stand-in is absurd. Better to trial nuclear fission or seek new energy sources. Only now did people see why the government had kept quiet. Whether searching for new sources, deepening solar power, or developing fission, all need years, which ordinary folks cannot wait out. In other words, once the truth is out, people understand they face a slow death. The vast majority will be eliminated, and only a very few with extraordinary constitutions or awakened heat resistance abilities may survive. So nature truly is screening, and humanity truly is evolving. But if we evolve too slowly or in the wrong direction, the whole lot will be cast aside. Stepping into June, each day grew hotter. By mid-June the outdoors was like an oven, and Hong and Phuong, unable to bear the heat, had to spray several bottles of cooling mist a day. It felt a touch cool right after spraying, then a moment later nothing at all. Useless stuff. Why can't the effect last a little longer? She fumed, flinging the empty can and pulling out a new one to keep spraying. But no sooner had she turned the corner than her clothes flashed into flame. She yelped in fright. Lucky there was a pool here, so she jumped straight in. When the fire was out, she climbed up with dripping hair and scolded, "How can you smoke here? Don't you know the place has a designated smoking area?" The man, flustered, said, "I just took a drag here. How was I to know your body would catch fire?" "Right, your clothes igniting out of nowhere has nothing to do with me." He tossed the butt and bolted, leaving Hong and Phuong speechless. The cooling mist's ingredient was alcohol. You mustn't spray it near an open flame. She hadn't cared at first, thinking it wouldn't be a big deal. Who knew someone would be sneaking a smoke right at the corner? Alcohol plus a spark and whoosh. How can a gadget like this still hide a safety hazard? She crawled up, bedraggled, and felt that staying alive was hard work. Sister Tong, Sister Han Han, don't use the cooling mist for now, it's prone to accidents. Sensing trouble, she ran to warn them. At the noon break, Van Han was in the staff room checking hot searches and said, "Too late, it already happened. Someone bought a cooling spray and left it in the car, forgot to take it out. The sun hit it, the temperature inside soared, and it exploded." Hong and Phuong was stunned. Besides catching fire, it could also blow up. Was this toy really so unsafe? "From now on I'll just use an insulated bag with some ice and drink cold water," she said, deflated. She had thought she'd found a treasure, but it turned out to be a death invitation. One careless move and you could go meet the ancestors. Still unwilling, she muttered, "It's this hot, the Federation this big, can't anyone think of a proper countermeasure?" "There is," Tong Xiao replied, eyes lighting up. She asked, "What is it? Tell me quick." "Raise your physique to level 4, or awaken superpowers like extreme heat resistance or super environmental adaptation," Tong Xiao said with a straight face, and Hong and Phuong fell silent, suddenly unsure whether getting physique to 4 was harder, or awakening designated powers was harder, or, with ordinary human aptitude, relying on brains to endure the heat was harder. Thinking it through, every choice felt like a death route with no way out. Near late afternoon, not yet 5:30 and before closing time, she clocked out early. The boss knew her neighborhood had power cuts from 6 to 8 in the evening, so he let it slide. It wasn't just her, other workers were the same, in such special circumstances. If they got back too late and didn't have enough electricity for the evening, they wouldn't just argue with the boss, they'd be ready to risk their lives. So later he simply moved closing from 9 at night up to 6 to send everyone home early. Those who left early would either have their pay docked or report in half an hour sooner. Anyway, the boss never took a loss. "Careful on the road, see you tomorrow." Leaving the pool, Tong Xiao waved to Van Han and headed for the station. Van Han was about to walk the other way when a nudge of instinct made her glance back. A man shot out of the street mouth, barreling around without dodging pedestrians, knocking several down. "Why do you bump into people and then run?" Tong Xiao frowned and tried to block him. The man pulled a knife from his pocket and slashed wildly, face feral. "Out of my way." Tong Xiao backed off several steps and, catching a glimpse of someone already calling the police, weighed how to pin him. "Talk it out. Why pull a knife?" Two burly men came to mediate. "Calm down, you just bumped a passerby, no need to panic." The two plus Tong Xiao boxed him in. Get out, get out." The knife man raged impotently, chopping hard. When he overswung and opened up too much, Tong Xiao snapped her bag into his wrist. Pain made him drop the blade and it skittered far off. The two men pounced, pinning him left and right while shouting, "Call the cops." Patrol officers arrived first on the alert, took the troublemaker All good, Van Han, who had watched the whole thing, smiled and slipped away. The very day the true reason for power rationing was announced, the netizens went mad. Everybody said trust the government, don't cast a ballot and you give up your rights. So why on earth, why force the government? We were just dealing with the heat when news spread that energy was running out, and right away there were random attacks and supermarket stampedes like side missions. From work to home, a 10-minute walk, and I saw 3 assaults. After dinner I went shopping. The market looked as if it had been looted, more than half the shelves bare. I went to the wholesale market for rice and noodles, 10 sacks, thought I was something. The neighbor called a full-size truck. Some people bought dozens of cases of bottled water and soda. I suspect they planned to flip it for profit. Among relatives and friends, some ate tainted grain, some drank poisoned water, some breathed toxic air. Their bodies were already weak. The recent heat took them all. This world really costs lives. I believed the government yet still wanted the truth. So I switched my vote at the last minute. I was wrong. I regret it now, truly, deeply. Walking down the street I met a lunatic with a gun spraying shots at random. I'm on a hospital bed repenting sincerely. On the way home I ran into a superpowered mugger. Lucky I'm a super 2 and hit harder, so I beat him to a pulp and dragged him to the station. If I were weaker I'd be done for. A friend ordered solar charging panels, said they work fine, at least you get lighting freedom. I got tempted, was about to buy and gone, all robbed out. Why not announce a day later, just 1 day short? Solar charging gear costs a lot to make and needs regular maintenance, so it's not that common. The moment many people buy, it gets cleaned out. Those who couldn't grab any are wailing. Who's more miserable than me? The first time I chose to trust the government, the second time I still chose to trust the government, and nothing turned out as I'd hoped. These folks are something else. Say no more, let it all be destroyed. What living soul wouldn't go mad? Can't cope with the heat disaster, can't speak to the papers. At least let me go crazy online to vent. Let's laugh like lunatics together. I've started to miss the evolution game. Once that line dropped the thread went quiet, the poster didn't care and wrote on. I used to think the evolution game was a disaster with a clear beginning and end that made many people miserable, but looking back today, it was more like an opportunity than a calamity. When you're inside the situation you can't judge it right, only much later do you know what you missed. Soaking in the mood. More people chimed in. I relied on the government to save me and slacked off the whole way. Now I'm just gritting my teeth on youth and health. Those with strong adaptation adjusted their mindset in a month, then ran toward danger and ground out a full set of attributes. Those with high potential brushed against death and awakened powers naturally. As for me, poor at adapting and lacking potential, I just steadied my mind and then the game vanished. I faced death many times yet never awakened. Even my stats didn't budge. Sure enough, my genes are bad, worse than others, and I deserve to be eliminated. When young I thought I was the center of the crowd and would be a great hero. Later I found I was just one ordinary person among the masses, failing to grow into the outstanding adult of my ideals, and I'm sorry for that. I always felt talented and unwilling to be ordinary all my life, only to find I didn't work as hard as others, and in the end I'm worse than everyone. The further it went the more it felt like recalling a short life of failures. Perhaps because their attributes were low, everyone sensed they wouldn't live long, for a while. The net was soaked in heaviness, no one saw a dawn, no one believed in survival. The next day, as usual, Van Han went to work and noticed someone tailing her halfway. She showed nothing, deliberately detoured and walked into a cul-de-sac. When she entered and found no exit ahead, the followers stepped out, the leader a man in a mask. Though there were 4 of them, she wasn't the least afraid and asked evenly, "Why are you following me?" "Because you are the only variable," the masked man said, with a strange undertone. "Without you, everything might return to what it was." She hadn't yet parsed the meaning when he flicked his hand. "Kill her." At the order his men raised twin pistols and fired in a rush. Van Han moved so fast she left after images. A heartbeat later a pile of bullets lay tinkling into her palm. A burly brute snorted and leapt in to grapple. She caught with her left, drove her right fist into his face, and dropped him cold. Strength. She glanced at the unconscious brute. Agility. Her eyes shifted to the dual-wielding shooter. Physique. To the muscle-bound bodyguard flanking the mask. Spirit. Finally resting on the masked man, a full attribute set. She tilted a smile. The bodyguard shielded his boss and matched eyes with her. Seeing her briefly far away, he smirked. Not just physique, it's dual physique and spirit. Slow to say but quick to act, the shooter seized the opening. Bullets spearing for Van Han's eyes, brow, and throat. Just as his grin bloomed, the air rang with metallic pings. The rounds were knocked aside and not a hair on her head shifted. Impossible, the shooter gasped. Van Han snapped the bodyguard's joints, stripped the handguns, rubbed them together and tossed them like scrap. then flicked a light kick and the shooter's thin shin cracked with a crisp crunch. In a blink the robbers were almost wiped out. She awakened before me, and all along I've never beaten her. She simply dislikes using violence. In truth she hits very hard. The things Tu Due had said kept circling in the mind. Tru Tuan had thought it was bluster to scare off potential enemies and keep others from harming Van Han, but today he suddenly realized Tu Due hadn't been playing mind games and had told the truth. Even so, how could someone like her, in a future fragment, need a fire where the ceiling fell at will and smashed her, dying as if into nothingness? Tru Tuan could not understand. Van Han sprang in with a single kick, stomping through Zhao Tuan's shin bone, then whipped out her phone and, with practiced calm, called for help. "Hello, this is the XXXX alley. For suspicious individuals are tailing me and tried to assassinate me. Please send officers to take them away." The dispatcher fell silent for a beat, for against one and still losing, a carefully laid ambush turning to a joke in an instant. Zhao Tuan's face twisted as he blurted, "You should have died long ago, why are you still alive?" Ending the call, Van Han slid the phone back into her pocket and answered offhandedly, "Because I don't want to die yet. When I do, I'll reconsider." Zhao Tuan had a prickling sense that something was wrong, thoughts nodding into chaos. Van Han pondered a moment, then knocked the three conscious men clean out. "This way they can't run," she said, satisfied with her handiwork. Before long the patrol arrived. She handed the culprits to the police, changed her route, and went on to work. "I found more good stuff," said Hong Hin Fuang, though the cooling mist had nearly caused a tragedy. Her zeal only grew. "These are cooling patches, stick them on and your body temperature drops. And this, 6 got water, add 2 drops to the bath and wow, instant chill." Tong Kio eyed her in surprise. "Where did you even hear of these? How do you have everything?" Hong Hin Fuang grew solemn. "Since the government announced power rationing, I realized my own inadequacy. Every day I charge 5 power banks, then read by a lamp at night, study other people's strategies, and trade intel with friends." "Competing like that, thought Tong Kio, stunned. "I used to think those tips would never matter, so I didn't study properly," she added, vexed. "Now I finally get how important knowledge is. One practical physics or chemistry tip a day." "Don't just study, stay safe," said Van Han. "This morning on my commute a superpowered thug blocked the road and tried to kill someone." "What happened then?" gasped Hong Hin Fuang. "The patrol took him away," Van Han said. "I also ran into a random knife-wielding maniac last night," sighed Tong Kio. "The world's a mess. Danger can pop up anytime." Hong Hin Fuang fell quiet. She had not awakened any combat-type power beyond cramming general knowledge. Should she find someone to teach her fighting skills too? She stood there a bit dazed, a university graduate, yet why must she learn so much? In the interrogation room, the officer pressed on. "Your accomplices have confessed. You're their leader, calling yourselves higher humans, guilty of multiple major cases. Your common trick is staging attacks on civilians and then swooping in to save them for clout. Not long ago you also spread fabrications online to force the government to reveal the truth about power rationing." His anger finally flared. "They're willing to testify against you. Your phone holds chats ordering subordinates to kill. What do you have to say?" The mask off, Zhao Tuan's face was young and tender. He stared off, not hearing, only muttering, "No, this isn't how it should be. Where did it go wrong?" The officer slammed the table. "Stop dodging an answer." Zhao Tuan flicked him a glance, shifted his eyes away, broadcasting indifference. The door opened and a grinning man breezed in. "If you won't talk to them, talk to me. Lose the pain. Look, I'm here to help." He babbled until Zhao Tuan cut him off. "Get real. I have resistance to inducement. Your shtick won't work. I won't be coaxed into talking." The room fell abruptly silent, flushing. The newcomers slunk out. The grilling dragged on for a day and a night, the superpowered team trying everything yet failing to pry him open. His accomplices, however, had already stated that he possessed a rare gift. He could see the future, and with very high accuracy. The government badly wanted to harness that to break the current deadlock, but Zhao Tuan simply refused to cooperate. "He still won't say anything?" the leader asked darkly. The young officer hesitated a beat. "Speak." The leader barked. The officer jolted and blurted, "He says he'll say nothing unless Van Han is brought in for a private talk." The room went deathly still. Then came the questions. Who was this Van Han, and why did he insist? A spirit-type esper who has repeatedly predicted major disasters. The Special Rescue Unit Chief, Tu Due, is courting her. She's the foremost saint. She also personally subdued Zhao Tuan. Came the answers. The calculus was simple. The caller's combat ability exceeded Zhao's. Let them meet. After a brief exchange, Van Han sat across from him. "Heard you wanted to see me? Some things won't make sense no matter how I turn them, so I need you to confirm.
Zhao Tuan raised his eyes and enunciated, if one day you were swallowed by a sea of fire, the ceiling collapsed on you, and you had no time to flee, then what? Then I must not have wanted to live, Van Han replied at once. Since childhood I've had early warning sense. If I intend to live, I will be far away before the blaze ever starts. Zhao Tuan's mind clicked. So that's it. One wrong premise topples everything. Someone who should have died long ago lives on, like a butterfly's wing beat reshaping fates, turning Tu Dewey into a love-struck fool, leaving Entrake, the boss whom Tu Dewey resented, to die alone in a hospital, and letting Tit Duong, though worth a huge bounty, lie on as a living dead. He had never understood how a death under a fallen ceiling, so void-like and flimsy, could ripple through so many lives. But if Van Han had been a seer-class powerhouse from the start and that fiery end was the fate she chose for herself, then it all held together. Yet a new doubt flared. With warning senses that strong, able to evade misfortune and seek fortune, why would you obsess over death? You're the criminal, am I one too? Van Han said coolly, you say nothing and expect me to answer you? He yielded, then what do you want to ask? With foresight that potent you could, legally and openly, gain status and wealth, why throw it away to be a felon, she asked in earnest. Zhao Tuan fell silent. At length he spoke slowly. When I was small my father was always at work, my mother raised me, she was, strange, ask what I liked, I'd say a remote control car, she'd scold the toy up and down and buy me a Rubik's Cube, claiming a trained memory. I wanted braised pork, she said fish was better. I wanted light-colored clothes, she begged hand-me-downs from a cousin and insisted on dark colors, tougher to soil. Sometimes I wondered if that was a kind of abuse, an attempt to break a child's spirit. Van Han could not help agreeing, the very telling left her short of breath. And then? Then, his mouth crooked into a queer smile, her bad acting turned both me and my father off. Dad had a degree, Mom was only primary school educated, they ran out of common ground. One day she found out he had another woman. She cried herself hoarse, I bore you a son, and Dad answered, what woman can't bear a child? You're so dim, how smart could your boy be? He always looked down on her, proud of his emotional control and broad learning, far above her, in truth, he just couldn't parent. Van Han sighed inwardly, fail and you're scolded, succeed, and no one's impressed, the burden of bearing children is forced either way. Later that woman really did give him a son, his voice sank. Father pushed for divorce, mother clung on. Amid the fighting she learned by chance that back then they came from the same town and attended the same school in different classes. Mother had ranked first in the grade, father somewhere in the top 10. Because of poverty she could not continue her studies. A kind soul offered help, saying scores like that must be nurtured, only studying could change fate, but in the end she never received the money and her schooling stopped. Much later we learned father had greased palms to steal the assistant slot. He rose on a stolen chance, then buried his shabby past and ground others underfoot. Mother's way of dealing could drive people mad, but that was not her nature, it was the gulf between education and none. Yet the man only said, it's her nature, bad genes. She can't learn. After the truth came out, mother refused the divorce, and one night she took a knife and cut that man's head from his neck. She went to prison, I became an orphan, no relative or friend would take me, so I was dumped in a welfare home. Bullying was baked into that place, worse for the child of a killer, so I ran. Later a kind shopkeeper took me in, gave me room and board and a wage of $800 a month. Not long after, a so-called Good Samaritan reported child labor, the boss was censured, the shop forced shut, and I was sent back. With my doll-like face I looked younger and easier to push around, everyone trying to take advantage, even a single coin. Everything I saw told me this world is filthy through and through. If so, why not build a new one? Van Han could only sigh. You asked why I wouldn't just live properly, this is my answer. He went on, years ago the Federation published a population report saying that over about 20 years, tens of millions of baby girls vanished before or after birth. To be born female means the first task is surviving one's own kin. This is a patriarchal society, men reign supreme. As a woman, I won't break myself for it. The world is worth only so much, so I'll do only so much. When I'm tired, I rest. When I don't want to, I strike. Zhao Tuan could not hide his shock. Perhaps he had never imagined hearing such words from the mouth of a good person. Isn't it fascinating, Van Han continued, that power great enough to steer the world's course rests in the hands of people like you and me? The Van clan were a lineage of spirit maidens, born to be drawn to calamity and to draw near. Leading people out of disaster is a priestess's charge. If grandmother still lived, she would devote herself wholly, but the clan has only me left, a lone sprout, acting on whim, shunning fetters. Say I won't act and I won't, say I won't live and I will not struggle. Zhao Tuan is the same, his pinpoint foresight in government hands would have turned the situation from the start, more people would have endured the heat and survived. Even without me there would be some chance for humanity's bloodline to carry on, but reality knows no if. Zhao Tuan chose not to forgive, and I rarely feel any fierce impulse to save the world, most of the time I act as I please. Exactly, Zhao Tuan laughed, tears in his eyes, so even if humanity is wiped out, there's no one to blame, it's merely the interest on our past deeds coming due. Reading reminder: the viewpoints of main and side characters and the inspirations drawn from the internet do not represent the author's personal stance. Family assets split 8 parts to the elder son and 2 parts to the younger daughter, still calling himself a fair father, quick to pull together tens of thousands to transfer the son's school, yet stingy about a few thousand for the daughter's college tuition, even claiming he is not biased towards sons. Life itself is a farce, Van Han said with a blank face. A garbage world like that is nothing to cling to. Tru Tuan wiped his tears and, while chatting, asked, "Is it safe to say this? Are you sure no one is listening to us?" Van Han said lightly, "If there are any overly radical words, it must be ancestral depression. I think I get why Tu Due values you." Tru Tuan stared at the interrogation room ceiling and murmured, "In the future I saw, you and Tu Due never even met, yet in reality, no matter how I coax, he will not leave you. As long as you will it, you could easily steer and wipe out the uncertain factors that doom humanity. But I am curious, how much of your feeling for Tu Due is real?" Van Han shot back, "Do I look like the type who sacrifices her own feelings for some greater good?" Tru Tuan choked, "From the very start, I only allow the person I like to stay near me. If I do not like them, I will not even engage," Van Han stated firmly. He stared at her, emotions turning tangled. Outside the interrogation room, someone muttered after a long struggle, "She does not look like she went in to persuade Tru Tuan, more like she went to sign up for the evil organization." The second saint, Cat Hai, said, "Powers do not work on him, only rhetoric can close the distance." Van Han did not do wrong, it is all courtesy. The others fell silent. This is beyond mere courtesy. The Special Rescue Chief glared, "Your department brought back nothing, theirs did. What more do you want?" As for Tu Due, he was stunned, his head was full of, "From the very start, I only allow the person I like to stay. If I do not like them, I will not engage." Cycling again and again, more than 10 times, and he still was not lucid. This is a two-way rush, this is sweet love. Joy bubbled up and he almost dashed in to lift Van Han and spin her. While they debated, the interrogation door opened. Van Han came out, briefed them, and said, "Tru Tuan is the 4th saint, he saw the future, so he staged everything. Deliberately pushed his spirit attribute to tend to end the evolution game early. He deserves death." Someone cursed under breath. In the past half a month everyone had been tormented by burning heat, many suffered heatstroke and were sent to hospitals. All of this was because of him. If the evolution game had remained, civilians could have kept grinding attributes and more would have survived. Instead, he destroyed the only hope of ordinary people. From then on their chance to endure the extreme heat approached zero. "Will he atone by telling us what future he saw?" asked the police leader. Van Han shook her head. He neither agreed nor refused, he just spaced out and said nothing. The Special Rescue Chief said, hard enough to pry his mouth open at all. "That is a breakthrough, we will grind the rest slowly." The police leader cast Van Han a look, expression unreadable, she thought. A warm-hearted officer eagerly sat her down. "Since you are here, let us register your file as well, as a good citizen." She fully cooperated. After filing, outside the bureau, Tu Due drew her to a corner. Cat Hai stared. "Do not bother him, Lovebrain is active." The chief waved calmly. Cat Hai was speechless. What a lineup! The 1st Saint Van Han saves on a whim and roams free. The 3rd Saint Tu Due looks capable yet is a hopeless romantic. The 4th Saint Tru Tuan is a bona fide villain who makes trouble when idle. With this party, if humanity does not go extinct, it must be by ancestral blessing. In the corner, he released her hand and hesitated. "What you said in there, is it true?" She blinked. She had said so much. Which line? "Only allowing the one you like to stay near, otherwise not engaging," he repeated. "True," she smiled. "You have stayed by me so long, are you not the one who knows best?" His eyes shone. He had stayed long indeed but lacked confidence. He always thought if he kept yielding she would not discard him, and he dared not imagine more, fearing greed would ruin their precious life. Besides, he was already happy, even if it never changed. Living on like this was enough. Seeing his worry, she grew solemn. "When I say I like you, I truly do. You know I never force myself into grievance." Fireworks burst in his chest. Speechless, he hugged her, lifted her high, and spun. She let him rebel. She knew that without him she would have no attachment to this world and would likely have chosen to quit long ago. Because she had requested a day off to talk to Tru Tuan, next day she went to work at the pool as usual. What happened? Why did you skip yesterday? Hong Hin Phuong asked. Went to the police bureau, Van Han summarized. Hearing the story of his mother, Huang's face turned odd. What is it? A dead black memory just lunged at me, she replied woodenly, still puzzled. Van Han listened as, seeing it was all sisters here, Hong shared. I surfed the net and binged web novels. Years back, the trend was the prodigal returns male lead paired with a pure kind female lead with a blank love history. A man without self-respect is like a wilted cabbage. After enough of it I question life. Why must a pure heroine match a man without self-respect? That couple is not worthy. The heroine keeps her body. Asking the hero to keep male virtue is not excessive. The heroine has never even had a crush. Asking the partner to have a clean romantic record is not excessive, yet some girls call it too much. People told me, in reality there is no such pure love, no such good men. I am just reading for fun, why drag reality in? Reality is bad. Fiction can be a fairy tale. If we do not even dare to dream, will reality's ugliness remain forever? If reality cannot, then in online make-believe, can we not be bolder? I will be blunt, I like men who keep male virtue. I hope if a man does not, then all my sisters would rather stay single than marry him. Then women en masse would skip marriage, forcing single men across the Federation to improve themselves. Of course I am not forcing other girls, nor calling for laws to shove my kink down everyone's throat. I just hope when I state my mate criteria, others treat it normally, not chase me down as if I committed a crime. These days even saying I like rich men rarely draw scolds for disdaining the poor, because people know marrying cannot cure poverty. Yet when I ask for a partner with a blank record, no exes, otherwise I would rather never marry, many see it as unforgivable. It is merely personal taste. I respect others' tastes, why can they not respect mine? Men can rightfully find wives that way, why cannot women find husbands that way? But the ambient climate is as is. Talk yourself hoarse and elders still do not get it. Some say low education makes you like this, raised in warped values. Such ideas root deep and grow harder to change with age, she sighed. All are victims, starved of learning, yet their words and deeds unconsciously press on the next generation. Van Han was silent. Hong went on. In growing up, how many dare claim a happy childhood? My mother, my aunt, my other aunt all used clumsy tactics in child rearing. Sometimes kids were pushed to breakdown, on the verge of mental illness. They did not care, even blamed today's kids for weakness, demanding toughness. Then the elder men step in, speak gently, and suddenly the kids see them as kind, then do not want to talk to the elder women, thinking there is no common language. The engraving forms step by step. In truth, more men had education before, at higher levels, so they looked more reasonable. That is not gender difference but education gap. Plus men often skip hands-on parenting. Most of the time mothers care for the kids. When conflicts flare due to their limits and ability in schooling, the men say a few words and the children feel understood. In the end the heavy dirty work stays with women and the good guy credit goes to them. Saddest is, when I was the child, I too could not communicate with my own mother. Van Han mused. Let me tell you something interesting. What? Hong blinked. From ancient times, even murderers and rapists were often made to marry and have children before punishment. Thus, no matter how bad certain male genes are, they kept propagating. Van Han said evenly. Today's mainstream aesthetic worships pale, youth, and thin, after generations of human selection, that inevitably yields petite, frail women. Truth is, back in matriarchal days people revered sturdy, thick, fertile, and hard-working women. Women were not necessarily weaker then. Men, Hong felt a nameless chill and gooseflesh rose. These are hearsay, ages apart and hard to verify, she added lightly, then shifted. The environment is hard to change, and so are others' beliefs. In such a world, the one thing you can decide is your own future. After that, air and body temperatures climbed day by day, even the sky seemed aflame, each breath burned the lungs. Because of heat, metabolism ran faster. A slight lapse in sweat poured like rain, causing dehydration. Ambulances threaded the city without rest, hospitals were over capacity, and many stopped breathing on the way. Gradually, people realized this was an exam only you yourself could sit, no proxies, and failing meant ruthless elimination. It was nature's survival of the fittest. Reality was cruel. On top of that, heat melted glaciers, seas rose, human living area shrank on a vast scale, though, luckily, water sources did not dry up. The fallen kept piling, corpses heaped into little hills. Because it was summer and to prevent pestilence, they were cremated together. Flames roared for more than 1 month.
and when 3 straight months of extreme heat finally ended, the Federation's population was under 3/10 of its peak, and among survivors, more than 80% were espers. Humanity, long self-styled masters of Earth, did not realize that when oil and coal run out without timely alternatives, they will, like other life, be defenseless before a sudden planetary fever. The good news is, the hardships have passed, humankind at last survived the crisis and crossed the pass. Next, we enter a new era and open a new chapter. Reading reminder: the viewpoints of main and side characters and the inspirations drawn from the internet do not represent the author's personal stance. The reminder line above will not be included in paid word count.